You had to feel a little good coming into that game last night after what the Giants did against Atlanta in those last two games, back-to-back games with 9 runs apiece. It seemed like the offense might have finally started clicking. You had your ace on the hill in Logan Webb going against a New York Mets team that is pretty damn good right now. They are on top of the NL East right now, but alas, going against a pitcher in Clay Holmes who had been struggling in the month of July, came in with a 5.66 ERA on the month before last night's start. Giants could not get anything going. They fall again, as I said, 8-1 here, despite getting 9 hits. Plenty of guys on base, just not doing anything once they did get on base. So good morning to all the Giants fans out there. It is the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap. And good morning to my co-host, Dan Devone. Dan, how are you today?
I actually could be better. Physically, and especially after what happened to the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, you kind of hobbled in here this morning. You all right, man?
I'm trying to be young and play sports I shouldn't be playing, but the San Francisco Giants, I tell you what,
Speaking of teams that aren't young and playing sports they shouldn't be playing.
Yeah, they're relatively young. I mean, they certainly play as though it's a geriatric league, but it is so frustrating because I still cannot get my arms around this team. I really can't. I mean, I thought that what happened in Atlanta, and I look at that lineup and I'm like, you should not be this bad offensively, but yet you are. And so I still, maybe I'm the only guy in the room that's holding out faith that they will be able to square something up in terms of hitting the baseball and making contact and driving in runs, because it makes no sense to me. When I look at 1 through 4, it doesn't get much better than going Ramos and Devers and Willie Adames and Matt Chapman. So it's beyond my bandwidth to try and explain what's going on with this team offensively right now.
It is weird because, as you saw it here in this last road trip, especially in the Atlanta series, you saw Devers start to heat up. You saw Chapman, he's starting to heat up now after he got back from the hand bruise that he had. Willie Adames is still on the heater that he has been on for the last month and a half. And in this past road trip, Ramos finally started swinging a hot stick as well. He was ice cold in the first half of July going into the All-Star break, came out scorching hot there. And I asked Bob Melvin about this last night. Like, Bob, you finally got your hitters all, you're hitting together at the same time. And he agreed. He's excited about it because this is what we've been waiting for all year. And it just seems so set up, especially against a guy in Clay Holmes. So again, like he's having a good year. He got a 3.40 ERA after getting the win last night. So he's having a pretty solid year, this guy. But he was a pitcher who was struggling coming into this game last night. He has had a rough month of July, and he had to figure a hot offense against a struggling pitcher at home with how big this series is. It would set up well for the Giants to have some success, and just was not the case there at all last night.
Well, when you think about it, and here's sort of what lends to my frustration, and I'm certainly not alone, is that to your point and Bob Melvin's point, this season has been Matt Chapman's got it going, but Willie Adames does not. Elliot Ramos is carrying the team, but everybody else is not hitting. Finally, Willie Adames is hitting, but Rafi Devers is struggling. So Atlanta, for the first time, Devers is making contact, and he's being that guy. Willie Adames is being that guy. Matt Chapman's hitting the ball better. As you mentioned, Elliot Ramos. So finally, everybody's on the same page for the first time this year. It's not just Willie Flores carrying you the first month of the campaign. You have multiple guys that are hitting the baseball, and then all of a sudden, last night happens. So I don't know whether it's the fact that it's almost August and we're wearing overcoats. Blame it on San Francisco, but this is beginning to make no sense to me.
No, I can't even blame the weather because it didn't affect the Mets at all last night. They were going against Logan Webb, who pitches very well at home, and Logan Webb is in a rough patch right now. These last 3 starts, including last night, he's got a 9.39 ERA over those 3 starts, and he is getting hit really, really hard. I counted, Dan, 8 hits last night by the Mets or 8 hit balls last night by the Mets that were 104 or harder off the bat, which is ridiculous for a guy in Logan Webb who is so good at limiting the hard contact. But I think the most frustrating thing about last night, Dan, is you did finally have the offense in sync, but it's coming at a time when the pitching is absolutely in flux, which that was supposed to be the strength of this team. It has been the strength of this team, is the pitching, mainly the bullpen, but the starting pitching as well. And It's just that just seems to be the 2025 Giants. If it's not one thing, it has to be another. Or if one thing isn't working, then something else is. If something's working, something else isn't. That's just been the tune of this team all year long, and hence the immense levels of frustration.
Last night was the worst case scenario because you knew at some point Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, we had talked about this, that there'd be some regression. You can't be that reliant on these guys. There's going to be, especially when you have Bulldogs that don't miss starts and accumulate as many innings as they do, you're going to go through points, as they call it, quote unquote, the dog days. You hit the wall and you're going to struggle and you need your offense to carry you through and just simply outslug another team. Well, last night it was a very it was not Logan Webb-esque sort of performance. And then the offense was anemic again. And if this is what's going to happen where your pitching now suddenly has become an area of concern and you continue to be anemic in terms of your offense, well, then forget about the playoffs. By the way, we can rag on the Giants and we can talk about their deficiencies, but solamente uno partido, one game from the playoffs. One game separates them and the San Diego Padres.
Despite it all, despite all the doom and gloom, despite all the worry and the consternation, Giants are still very much in this thing. And it is, I don't think anyone should be waving a white flag. They are a good week away from being very, very much in the thick of the playoffs. Being in the thick of a playoff spot right now. So it's rough right now, but salvation's not that far away for the Giants. And again, if you're looking for positives here on this Saturday morning, which again, it's tough to do right now because you had the 6-game losing streak coming out of the All-Star break, 2 wins against Atlanta that I don't think really impressed anybody. It's obviously scoring 9 runs in back-to-back games. That's impressive for this team. But you do it against a Braves team that is just not good, especially pitching-wise. They've been decimated by so many injuries, and that bullpen is so bad that I don't think anyone is really taking seriously that whole that outburst there over those 2 games. But a part of me also think, like, if you're in a hitting groove, you're in a hitting groove. You can't bring that home with you across country, and you have an off day, and it's just, man, last night sucked. Like it did.
Good night, everybody.
That's 8 minutes into the show. That's where we're at. Like, no, but seriously, like this is a big homestand for the Giants here. These 6 games, 5 left now, and I figured they had to go 5-1 on this homestand.
Yeah,
and they blew their one right there last night there, Dan, against the Mets, and it's going to get tougher from here on out. You got David Peterson. He's going to be on the mound this evening for the Mets, and he's having a pretty good year. He was an all-star, got a 2.9 ERA, and also, Dan, he's a lefty, which means it's whatever reason, Giants just can't hit lefties. And then tomorrow night, Giants will probably be throwing a bullpen game, which I know a lot of Giants fans won't like that. I don't know if it's going to be a bullpen game or if there's going to be an opener and a bulk guy, but whatever the plan is for the Giants on the mound on Sunday night, the Mets are throwing out Kodai Senga, who is, just got a 1.70 ERA on the year and is on the short list of Cy Young candidates right now.
Well, the big question is, who do you start on Monday?
And that is a very, very big question, is one that the Giants don't even know the answer to right now. They're probably going to call someone up. It could be a Carson Wisenhunt. That could, if there's ever a time for him to be the guy, that could be it. It could be Mason Black, who's been up here already once this year.
Do you know who they call up? Who they should call up?
Who do you want to see them call up?
Merrill Kelly. It's time.
You think they should go make the trade for Merrill Kelly?
Now. You have to. It's not an area of before where we could use another veteran starter. You have to. Forget about hitting. With what's going on with Birdsong, Roop's on the shelf for hopefully the next 2 starts. You've got to go get a starter. But now it's not just a veteran and a guy that can eat up some innings and is somewhat reliable. You need to go get a good starter. And Arizona apparently is selling. Josh Naylor is now a member of the Seattle Mariners. Merrill Kelly is on the wrong side at 35. I want to say 36 years of age, but he's Merrill Kelly at the end of the day.
He's still a damn good pitcher.
He's an expiring contract. I think they need to go get him.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the big news that broke yesterday was indeed the Giants putting Landon Roop on the 15-day injured list with elbow inflammation. And when this injury first was announced, Dan, my first thought was, if Landon Roop's injured, is it one of those like phantom IL things where it's like They just want to rest his arm for a little bit. And so, they say you have an injury or something like that. So then they can put you on the IL for 2 to 3 starts and let you rehab, as I do air quotes here on the radio. But in reality, what a pitcher's doing in that situation is basically just taking some time off, resting the arm, reducing the amount of stress on the arm to save their health for the stretch run of the season. But when the reason was elbow inflammation, I immediately realized, no, this is not a phantom IL stint. This is, if you're going to do a phantom IL stint, you'll do like an ankle injury or a blister or something like that. That was not one of those cases here. And yeah, very, very concerning here. But the good news is, and again, we talked with Bob Melvin about this last night. We talked to Landon Roop about this last night. We can hear from them later on. But there's optimism that they caught it early enough, this elbow inflammation, that he won't be out for a long time. But anytime you hear elbows in pitchers in the same sentence, it's hard not to get nervous.
We've talked about this, that you're throwing a guy out there that has never done this before in terms of innings amassed. He's over 100 innings. He's never thrown this many at the major league level. And you can say, well, he's thrown, I think he went 110 maxed out in the minor leagues in terms of the most innings he's ever thrown.
106, 107.
But this is what you're susceptible to. Again, to guys who are being pushed into a space they've never been before, is that you blow a tire or you stretch a tendon or a ligament. And this is part of what the dog days are about. And that's why suddenly you're seeing somebody that we dogged for the first couple of months, but he's a veteran and knows how to preserve the body and knows when and how to pitch in these moments. But Verlander might be your most consistent guy going forward. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the Landon Roops and the Hayden Bird songs, they hit a wall. And that's what happens when you become reliant on younger pitchers.
Yeah, and I do think a bright side of this, if there is to be a bright side, and I talked with Landon about this last night, is that he is going to be able to at least rest the shoulder a little bit as well by taking this time off. So you don't want to take time off this way, but this could end up being a bit of a blessing in disguise, so to speak, for Landon Roop, assuming that the elbow inflammation isn't serious, assuming that they are correct and that they did catch it early, and they will be able to treat it early, and it won't grow into something worse that will require any sort of procedures. I don't want to say the forbidden word here in this sense with Landon Roop. So while he's having that time off, he will have some time to rest the rest of the body, rest the shoulder, which should help, down the stretch, because Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, again, they're scuffling right now, but you expect them to bounce back. Justin Verlander did get his first win this week, so we're very excited about that. And I don't know what that's going to unlock for him. I do know that Verlander, he was laboring through those first 16 starts without a win. And I got to imagine now that he's got that win, he's starting to feel like himself a little bit more. Maybe that unlocks a bit of a better pitcher as well. But as you said, Dan, Landon Roop has been one of their most consistent pitchers. And he is a guy who, at this point, they're going to need to rely on for some big-time innings down the stretch here. So hopefully he's able to get back sooner rather than later.
Well, it was about a little more than a month ago when he got tattooed out in L.A. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. And he's been nails ever since.
His ERA has been under 2, and he has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. He doesn't have, what's frustrating about him is that he doesn't have enough innings to qualify as one of the league leaders. He can't statistically be considered one of the. He just simply doesn't qualify. But he would be.
Yeah, you have to have more innings pitched than your team has played games, and I believe it's pretty damn close.
He's
actually
close.
I think Landon's a couple innings games behind what the qualification would be.
But now I think the paradigm is shift where I think the concern all year long was you need more offense, and they do. But what's more pressing, I think, is that they need pitching. And it should be clear to everybody now that what was once the strength of this team is slowly becoming the Achilles heel. And they have to go out and they have to get somebody that is certified. And I'm talking, I don't know everybody that's out there, and I know there's a lot of names that we can throw out there, but I think that maybe not both of them, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, are going to get dealt, but I think one of the two is a good bet, are going to get traded before the deadline. They have too many expiring contracts. Yeah. I'm referring to Arizona, and Merrill Kelly would be a perfect fit. And obviously it depends on what it is that Arizona's asking in return.
I get kind of I have a hard time buying into interdivisional trades like that, just because, I mean, do you really want to send a guy somewhere where you're going to see him as often as you will? But maybe if they are on expiring contracts, maybe that does change.
He may end up in Arizona at the end of next year.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be, Giants trade, like a Carson Whisenhunt for Merrill Kelly, and then Merrill goes back, and Giants got to face Gallen, Kelly, and Whisenhunt in Arizona next year. But no, what happened this week, Dan, is basically, last week on this show, we were talking about who the Giants can get pitching-wise, and we had Alex Pavlovich on, and he said, starting pitching is very much the big priority they need to get now. And last week, we were looking at names like, Charlie Morton, Andrew Heaney, Mitch Keller. I mentioned Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo with Kansas City is a guy who would absolutely be on board with getting right now. Those are guys who are like 3-4 starters. Those are guys who you plug into the back of the rotation. They'll give you consistent innings. And if they pitch well enough, maybe they're your 4-starter come playoff time. But now it feels like you can't shop at grocery outlet anymore for a starting pitcher at the trading deadline. You got to go to one of the more expensive grocery stores. You got to go to either Safeway, or you might have to even go to Whole Foods now to do your shopping for a pitcher. And I'm talking about, Gallen and Kelly. I'm talking about Edward Cabrera in Miami.
We want a non-GMO pitcher.
Yeah. And then you might have to go to or Joe Ryan with the Twins, who's going to be the crown jewel of this trade deadline.
Unless Eldridge is on the table, I don't know if you have enough to get Ryan.
Yeah. But this is where this trade deadline is going to be very, very frustrating, I think, for the Giants, and that is there is a lot of teams that are very much in this playoff hunt right now that fashion themselves as contenders. I mean, you look at the wild card standings right now, Dan, you got obviously your 3 teams in the American League. You got the Yankees, Mariners, Red Sox. They're holding your 4th, 5th, and 6th wild card spots respectively. But then you got the Rangers, Rays, and Guardians, who are a game or half game, a game and a half, and 2.5 games out respectively of that 6th playoff spot. And then in the National League, Cubs, Phillies, Padres, those are your 4th, 5th, and 6th teams. And then a game back, and a game and a half back are the Reds, Giants, and Cardinals. So you have basically 9 teams in each league right now that are in the playoffs or are in the playoffs hunts. That is 18 of the 30 teams that are going to be in this. Then you're going to have, of those other 12, some of those teams are going to be on the fence. Some of those teams are, maybe just going to be standing pat. There are not going to be a ton of selling teams at the deadline, which is this is all a long-winded way of saying it's going to be very expensive to add pitching talent this coming Thursday.
Yeah, it's easy for us to say who they should go out and get, but the question now becomes, what do they want in return? I know that the Yankees were on board for Josh Naylor, and they wanted Suarez at third base, and they still may get him, but the reason they didn't get Naylor is simply because of the asking price. So we don't know behind closed doors. The Mariners could afford it, but it depends on the ask. Obviously, Eldridge is off the table, but what are you asking for to get Merrill Kelly or to get one of these star pitchers now becomes the question going forward. I think that, when you look at San Francisco right now, for whatever reason, again, if you want me to explain what the hell's wrong with this offense, it's beyond words. I don't know, because these are not bad players. And these guys have all shown, at least in the last 2 games prior to this homestand, that when they're all hitting together, they can be one of the better offenses in the National League. And certainly on paper, they're proven. These are proven, some all-star players, 1 through 5 in that lineup. But when it comes to the pitching now, that's the concern, because I don't have as much concern, I guess is what I'm saying, offensively.
Yeah.
But right now, it's almost like break glass in case of emergency in terms of their statuses when it comes to the starting pitching, and even the bullpen's got some holes. I don't know what the hell was up with Duvall last night, but
Camilo Doval, that's its own conversation as well. And yeah, he did. In a while. Well, he had pitched. Yeah, it was his first time pitching in 10 or 12 days like that, and so he needed to get some work in. I thought it was an interesting situation bringing him in there, but yeah, it does make sense. And this is where, I don't like it when Doval comes in non-safe situations, because he's so incredibly not crisp in those situations. He got roughed up. He hit the first batter he faced, and it was not a clean inning at all. He gave up 2 runs, and this was an issue that Doval had last year, where Bob Melvin would bring him into non-safe situations, and for closers, when you're a closer in a safe situation versus a closer in a non-safe situation are two completely different pitchers. And Camilo Doval needs to have that safe situation pressure in order for him to pitch effectively. That's what makes him an effective closer. And you saw it happen last year, Dan, where he would come in these non-safe situations, he would get lit up, and it shook his confidence. And that ended up becoming a problem for the Giants, so much so that he was removed out of the closer spot by the end of the year and had to go to AAA at one point just to find himself. So, but that is to say, the bullpen I'm not that concerned about. I am a little bit worried about the future of Eric Miller, and I do expect the Giants to probably find some relief help as well, just to get some reinforcements there. Reliever names I can't tell you anything about. There's so many relievers out there. I don't know who the guy to get there is. I like what we're seeing from Matt Gage, but going back to the starting pitching, hitters are going to cost however much of the deadline. This deadline, though, it just feels like with how many teams need starting pitching and the names that are going to be on the market, like a guy who I don't know if we're going to see him next week is Mitch Keller. Again, I brought him up a lot. That's the guy who I think is at the top of my list of guys who I want to get. You might have to part with a top 10 prospect to get a guy like Keller who's pitching really well, getting screwed by run support, but you're going to have 5-6 teams who are going to be trying to get a guy like that, and someone's going to have to part with someone that they don't want to part with. And that's going to be the thing where it's not that I don't know if the Giants are going to be willing to part with their top 10 prospects not named Bryce Eldridge. It's more concern of, are the Giants' top 10 prospects whose names are not Bryce Eldridge, are they worth more than another team's top 10 prospects? And that's where I feel like another just hurdle for the Giants to have to clear this.
Yeah, and to that point, I think what becomes really interesting going forward as we hit the deadline is we have our thoughts and our perception of Matos and Luciano. But I'm just curious, if you're Arizona, if you're the Cubs, if you're Kansas City, what do you think of these two guys? Like, is there any value? Is there any interest in Luciano and Matos? Because to me, and I said this last week, those are two guys that I think are eventually are going to get traded, and you bet you're better off doing it now as opposed to doing it over the offseason. And part of it is because they're out of options. So I'm sort of curious. Obviously, those two alone, I don't think are enough to get you Keller or to get you Merrill Kelly. You're going to have to throw somebody else in there. But I'm just curious if they sweeten the pot, or has everybody just simply gone sour on Luciano, who, if you pulled this trigger, 3-4 years ago, you could have got a boatload back. You could have gone straight up with Luciano when he was a top 10 prospect at one point.
Mm-hmm. He was Giants number one.
I'm just curious whether you could sell, and you got to be a real salesman at this point and say, hey, listen, kid's only 23. Matos is in his mid-20s. These guys got a huge future, especially if you're a team that's looking to rebuild for tomorrow. I'm just curious if they carry any value in terms of trying to get that pitcher.
My guess right now is Marco Luciano, you're not getting a ton of value out of him in return. I mean, he's got some power. He's got 18 home runs in AAA this year, but he's not hitting the ball well. I think he's hitting around 220. He doesn't have a defensive position. They tried him at short, didn't work out. They tried him at first, didn't work out. They tried him in the outfield, it didn't work out. So you got a prospect that, by and large, everyone has watched you fail to develop numerous times, and he's basically a defunct asset at this point. So, yeah, whatever you are getting for him now is going to pale in comparison to what you could have got for him a couple of years ago. So it's going to have to be Luciano and someone else who's on that prospect list. I don't think you'll need like a Luciano in a whiz and hunt package to get someone like a Mitch Keller, but to get someone like an Edward Cabrera, to get someone like a Zach Gallen, yeah, that might be the price point that you have to go to there. And I'm kind of curious. 888-957-9570 is the number. I want to hear from Giants fans here on the Wrap. We take any and all Giants takes. How desperate should the Giants be going into this trade deadline? I still maintain that Bryce Eldridge is untouchable. Is there a name out there, though, that if he becomes available, you would be okay with moving off of Bryce Eldridge in that situation? So definitely want to hear from Giants fans on that one. Or you know what? I want to hear from our people in the YouTube chat. I want to see some names in the YouTube chat of who they want to see the Giants go get at this trade deadline there. And shout out to those who are watching on YouTube, brought to you by First NorCal Credit Union. for a low-rate auto loan. Apply online or just ask for First NorCal financing at the dealer. We are coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios. Laughing Monk, righteously brewed in San Francisco. Got a great rest of the show coming up here, Dan. We'll talk a little bit about Logan Webb's start last night. Talk a lot about what the Giants are going to do at this deadline, their playoff chances. And at 10:30, we got George Kontos, who's a host of Giants pre- and post-game on NBC Sports, World Series champion, former Giants reliever. We'll talk to him about what we saw from Logan Webb last night and where the Giants are at going into the deadline here. So stick around. We got a lot coming up here, and that is going to be brought to you by Fremont Bank, here for you, here for good.
Now back to the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap on 95.7 The Game.
Back into the wrap. 888-957-9570 is the number. We want to hear from all Giants fans. We take any and all Giants takes on the show. Coming at you the morning after the Giants fell 8-1 to the New York Metropolitans. Logan Webb goes 4 innings, really gets roughed up there. 6 runs allowed, all of them earned, 8 hits. His ERA has ballooned up to 3.38, Dan. And his last few starts, it has been pretty rough there. Again, he had the 6 runs last night. Go back to his previous start in Toronto. He got roughed up there to the tune of, as I tried to talk through pulling up his stat line here, and as our internet is absolutely failing me, but he did get lit up in Toronto and then got hit hard against the Dodgers too in that Friday night before the All-Star break as well. The Giants were at least able to pull out the win in that one, but 3 straight rough starts for Logan Webb, and we talked to him after the game, and he was he's definitely feeling it right now, giving up a lot of hard contact. As I mentioned, he had 8 hits that were 104 miles per hour or more off the bat last night, which for a guy like Logan Webb, who is usually so good at limiting that hard contact, that's concerning to see. And I just asked him point blank, like, why do you think you're having issues with that? And his answer was pretty simple. It was, when you look at that box on the TV, the balls are in the middle of the zone. That's why they're getting hit pretty hard, which pretty blunt assessment there from Logan Webb, just leaving balls out over the middle of the plate. And this is a time when the Giants really kind of need their ace to be their ace. And he's just not, these last 3 starts, it has just not been there for Logan Webb. And it's a little concerning.
He's fatigued. I don't think there's anything more to it. He's just fatigued. And this happens. It happens to just about everybody in Major League Baseball, especially when you're a horse like Logan Webb and you go out there every 5 days. You'll have a dead arm. And I think after watching him face the first couple of hitters, you could clearly see that this was not typical Logan Webb stuff. And you know what the biggest indicator is? When he gets the ball up, nobody keeps the ball below the knees or at the kneecaps better than that of Logan Webb. And his pitches were flat. They were just put out there on a tee. And you could just, and sometimes you can just, guts and guile will get you through, but he's just fatigued and he's hit a patch here. And this is when you need the offense, ideally, to pick you up and win a shootout, win a game 10-9, 11-8. But they clearly don't have the capabilities of doing that. So to compound things, it's the worst case scenario where Logan Webb is suddenly going through a rough patch. I don't think it's an indictment on suddenly he's lost it. No, he'll be back. It just happens. It's part of baseball. This is a battle of attrition at the end of the day. And it'd be nice from time to time to be able to rely on your offense to dig you out of a hole or to help you out when you don't have your best stuff out there. But the offense is a whole nother story. It's a whole nother can of worms.
No, and this is the thing where like hitters go through rough stretches, and Bob Melvin was saying this last night. He's basically just saying, this is a rough patch for Logan Webb. This is that hitters go through rough patches too, and they happen to the tune of going 0 for 4 several nights in a row. Pitchers have rough stretches as well, and Logan Webb, he's good for at least a couple rough stretches every now and then, especially around this time. I'm looking at kind of the numbers he did last year, and Dan, there's a stretch in July where he got roughed up by the Blue Jays, Rockies, and Dodgers. So it's just, it happens. He has these 2 to 3, sometimes 4 start stretches where he just gets knocked around a lot. And this is the guy, he's a pitch to contact pitcher. So he doesn't always have that strikeout stuff, which he has developed a little bit more of this year. But the struggles of a pitcher are always exacerbated when they're happening on a team that can't score runs. And that's just the thing. It is. He needs the bats to pick him up. They're not picking him up. And so it just exacerbates these rough patches so much more. Because again, he did get knocked around by the Dodgers a couple weeks ago, but we don't talk about that because he got the win. And the Giants won and everything's forgiven there. So it's tougher when you're not getting that run support and your pitcher's struggling, and that's why it feels like the sky's falling all over the place.
I don't have as much concern for Logan Webb because I think Logan Webb will be Logan Webb at the end of the day. Again, he's just going through something, and it's to be expected. It happens to just about every major league pitcher, even the best Hall of Famers. My bigger concern now becomes on the back end of that rotation. You lost Hayden Birdsong. And I do want to talk about Hayden Birdsong because I think that is, that's a serious, serious concern, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But now it becomes, when you lose Landon Root, that 3, 4, 5, the back end, and I don't know where people are at with Verlander. I'm okay with Verlander. I always have been. I told you that this is a guy that, at the end of the day, he could still be that guy that you're relying upon because he's a veteran. He's been there and done that before. But there is a big concern. I don't focus necessarily on Logan Webb. I know we want to react because the game was less than 24 hours ago and what the hell's going on with him. I do think Logan Webb will be Logan Webb.
Oh, yeah, I am not worried about Logan Webb long-term whatsoever because we do this every time Logan Webb goes through a rough patch because for whatever reason, we can't just accept that Logan Webb is a good pitcher.
He's human.
Yeah, it is. He goes through a rough patch. Oh, he's not good. He's not an ace. He's not that great. Ooh. It's like, no, guys, he goes through rough patches. Every pitcher does, all right? Like, Tarek Skubal goes through his own rough patches here and there as well. It's just, it happens, and we just have to overreact to it every single freaking time. The next start, Logan's going to be pitching this coming Wednesday against the Pirates, a terrible team that can't hit, the perfect kind of opportunity for him to get back into a groove. If he comes out and he shoves against the Pirates, he gets back into that pitching groove, then yeah, we're not worried about Logan Webb anymore.
Yeah, and the concern, I think, for Giant fans, if you really want to focus on the pitching, it's what do you do with 3 through 5, or at least 3 and 4? If assuming that the number 5 guy is Verlander, then who's the 3 now becomes a big concern. And at least in the interim, with Landon Roop out for potentially the next month or at least the next couple of weeks?
At least 2 weeks for right now. From what I gathered last night is there's a lot of optimism that it will only be just 2 starts. So could I be wrong? Sure, I guess, but right now I think there is very, very good optimism that it will be a short-term stint.
But he's still going to be under the watchful eye.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to be side-eyeing his starts the rest of the year because he's a young starter with an elbow inflammation. They might be able to get him back, but hopefully he's good at that point.
And this just screams you got to go out and you got to get pitching help, and you got to do it pretty quick. I think this begs to sort of the bigger question, and that is this team just a 500 squad? Is it like, are we trying to put lipstick on a pig here? I talked about this. They got off to the 8-1 start at the beginning of the season. The beginning of the year, I think we'd all admit it's just what's up is down, what's down is up.
Nothing ever makes sense in the first month.
Your teams are trying to hit their stride. The good teams, usually take a little while before.
I think the Rockies had a winning record at one point in April.
But since then, they have been, now they've been a sub 500. I looked this up, the last 75 games, which is a pretty good sample size. They're 3 games under 500. Mm-hmm. This team is right around 500, if not a game or 2 below. And I'm talking over the last, not the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm talking about over nearly 4 months of baseball.
No, you go back to the end of April. Since the end of April onwards, they are in the bottom third of the league in basically every single offensive category. And that's after being in the middle of the pack back in April. But this team offensively, we know what they are. And they are just a very below average offensive team. But the thing is, Dan, weren't we kind of expecting that? Like, was that the plan coming into the season, that it's going to be a team that is going to be built around their pitching? It's going to be built around their defense, which Elliot Ramos last night, yikes. First play of the game, Brandon Nimmo hits one out the left that by all accounts should have been a can of corn out, and Ramos just completely whiffed on playing that one and took the wrong route again. Ball gets over his head again, and you have an unnecessary runner on base again.
Was that Nimmo?
Yeah, that was Nimmo hit that last night, which I noticed Brandon Nimmo swings a sledgehammer in the on-deck circle when he's waiting to hit, which I don't know how many people knew that, but I noticed that last night. I'm like, dude's just down there swinging a hammer around. I kind of like it. Maybe
it's kind of old school. They used to swing these huge sort of apparatus so that when your bat feels lighter.
Yeah, no. So I kind of like, hey, maybe some guys in the Giants.
I do want to talk about that for a second because it looked like that on the broadcast. I wasn't there. You were.
Yeah.
And so immediately, Kruk and Kipe said that was a missile by Nimmo. And they had talked about how the wind was blowing out to right field. And they said, they didn't say it as much, but they framed it that was not on Ramos. The minute I saw that, I was like, oh my God, here we go again. He's coming in on a ball that's whistling over his head. But I wasn't there, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt because according to Kruk and Kipe, it's like that ball by Nimmo just jumped off the bat and Ramos had no chance. I'm with you. I saw it, and that did not look like the right angle to take.
No, it was a bad angle from the jump. I mean, he was cutting in. Now, again, I don't know if it was like a difficult ball to see last night. It was an overcast sky. There were the lights on, and sometimes you just lose the ball in the air. But this isn't about losing the ball in the air. This is about he just didn't read it off the bat. Like right off the bat, you could tell, obviously you can tell where it's going for the most part off the read. And his first thing in, you could hear the noise was so loud. And his first step is in. And for me, Dan, I was always taught when, growing up playing baseball that no matter what, you want your first step to be back at minimum. Take your first step back because it's easier to go back and then have to go forward to get the ball rather than go forward and turn around and go back, which is what Ramos did last night. So at minimum, you got to take that first step back. He's not even doing that. And it's too damn often now we're seeing him make these just ridiculous mistakes in the field. And for a team that, again, is not really built to give up runs like that, this is a team that it needs its pitching to be locked in. It needs the defense to be locked in. That was always the vision of what this team was going to be like when Buster Posey constructed it this offseason. And for the most part, I do think this is a solid defensive team. Mm-hmm. They have mistakes out there, and I know you could probably look at their errors, and they're probably in the middle of the pack when it comes to errors. But when you watch this team play, they are better defensively than I think some of the numbers will give them. But it has to be consistent like that when your offense isn't good. And so I think, is this team just a 500 team? I think they're slightly better than that. I think they're a team that should be in the 85 to 88 win category at the end of the year.
Is that enough to get you anything?
I think 88 wins could get you in that 5 or 6 spot right now.
I want to say the Mets got in with 89 last year. If I'm
and
not
I think,
mistaken.
yeah, I think
they went to the NLCS.
I think it's going to be something like that. And this is very much if you're in, you have a chance. And when you have
Arizona was 84 2 years ago. And when
you got that 3-game series in the wild card, and you got Logan Webb and Robbie Ray those first 2 days, like you're going to feel as good as any team going into the playoffs here. So no, I definitely think this team is better than when you make a move for a guy like Rafael Devers, you're not just a 500 team. That is a move that a team makes that is trying to do some damage now and in the future, but more importantly now. When you sign guys like Willie Adames and Matt Chapman to long-term deals, you're trying to do damage now. And so, this whole concept, this is just a 500 team. They're playing like one. I get that. I think there's another level that this team needs to be able to access. And if they can get Devers finally hitting right, which putting him at first base, maybe that's what unlocks him. If this offense can get going a little bit, take some pressure off the pitchers, I think you'll see this all kind of trickle down to where this team will start to play a little bit better. But it's going to start with the bats actually getting the job done.
Well, that's what's going to happen. Because let's just say, even if you stay at this pace and somehow you sneak into the postseason, because if you think about it, San Diego's clearly flawed. Cincinnati should not keep you up at nights. St. Louis isn't very good, and they haven't been good of late, although they're beating up on the Padres. So you can get into the postseason. But if it's a quick exit, you're right back where you started in terms of evaluating this baseball team. And so it's not so much, I know the focus is we want to get into the postseason. We haven't been there in a while.
Yeah.
Get to the playoffs. But if you're going to get bounced early, it really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day to me. If this team is going to be legitimate, they got to run off 10 of 12. They got to win 8 in a row. You cannot stay at this pace of taking a step forward and 2 steps back. Winning your last 2 against the Atlanta Braves out on the launching pad and then suddenly come home and they get blasted by the Mets. You can't win 4 in a row and then lose 3 or 4. At some point, you got to get off of this treadmill if indeed you are going to be a legitimate contender out of the National League this year. And you've got to win some games. You've got to get to 15 to 20 games over 500.
Yeah, well, that might be a little bit difficult for this team. Again, this is clearly a wild card team. I think we can. They're not going to catch the Dodgers unless the Dodgers give them a little bit of help. Which again, the Dodgers have not been playing well this month either. You know, the Giants have not. The Giants have actually gained ground on the Dodgers this month for whatever that might be worth. But I do think there is something to be said about let's just get in there first. Now, if they get in, it's a quick exit. I think there is something to be said about a team that at least made it into the playoffs and that you can sell that as a sign that you're moving in the right direction. And this is kind of where I kind of, and rub my hands a little bit just about the construction of this team. I do believe this team was constructed as is to win now. Like when you look, the guys on this team, the contracts that you have, the money that you have committed to this team, it's not like you're spending a bunch of money on washed up players like the Giants were back in 2017 and 2018. There's a team full of guys who are in their prime in the case of Devers, Adames, and Chapman, guys who are rising up into their prime in the case of guys like Elliot Ramos, Jung-Hoo Lee. You have two legitimate pitchers in Logan Webb and Robbie Ray. And you also got, let's be honest, it's still one of the best bullpens in baseball. Mm-hmm. When you have when your team is comprised of those things, several veteran hitters, young hitters, good pitchers, great bullpen. By all accounts, that should be a team that's in the thick of the playoff race. That should be a team that is better than what the 500-ish record would indicate. It basically, what the major issue with all this, though, is to why this team is not where they should be. It's the inability to get that extra big hit. The hitting with runners in scoring position, it's been a vexing problem all year long, to where these guys, they're not adjusting their at-bats in the moment. I'm watching Pat Burrell pregame trying to work with them and get them to adjust their approaches in the moment. It's just not working. But, Dan, you look at the lineups last night, and I think that's one of the notable differences between the Giants and the Mets last night. Your top four hitters for the Mets were Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso. Giants' top four hitters, Ramos, Devers, Adames, Chapman. Top four of both lineups produced somewhat last night. The Mets a little bit more than the Giants' top four. But where the difference really came, especially in that fourth inning, Dan, it was the bottom of the lineup. Starting with Brent Beatty, he got a base hit. Alvarez gets a base hit. Then Logan Webb gives up the walk to Mauricio. And the bottom of the lineup's getting damage done. They're loading the bases up. Taylor has the fielder's choice to score a run, and then that sets things up for the top of the lineup start doing some damage. When have we ever really seen that this year from the Giants, where the bottom of the lineup is setting the table for the top of the lineup to come through? Or when the bottom of the lineup does set the table like they did last night at one point, I believe it was in the
sixth.
In the sixth inning here, you got Yaz on, you got Jung-Hoo Lee on, and then, it was the fifth inning. Sorry, you got Casey Schmidt, you got Patrick Bailey get leadoff singles here, and then Ramos pops up, Rafi strikes out, Willie pops up. That's the difference between the Giants and the Mets. When the Mets bottom of the lineup will set the table, whereas the Giants bottom lineup doesn't. Or when the Mets bottom of the lineup does set the table, the top of the lineup comes through. Meanwhile, the Giants bottom of the lineup, they do set it up, the top doesn't come through. That's one of the big differences, and that's just it's beyond frustrating when that happens, and that's where kind of you start to see why this team is hovering around 500.
And I don't know how to explain it, and I don't know that I dare anybody to try and give me a rational explanation as to why that's happening, because these are good hitters. And last night, I think it was a 6-1 ball game in the fifth, and you got Casey Schmidt and you got Bailey that get on board, and you're like, okay, you got 2 on and nobody out. The percentages of you getting a run are pretty good.
And your 3 hottest hitters are coming up to the plate.
Elliot Ramos, and you're going Devers, and you're going Adames, who just lit it up out in Atlanta, and you get nothing. And so we sit here on a Saturday morning and try and explain it away. I don't. It's not as though Devers isn't a good hitter. It's not as though Adames historically can't hit with runners or ducks out on the pond. And Elliot Ramos has been good. It's just one of those things.
Ramos was 2 for 2 at that point.
It's just one of those things, and that's why I still, believe it or not, hold out hope that, this is a team that at some point it's going to put it together offensively. That's the only explanation. I don't know how to put any rationale or to get my arms around and somehow make sense out of what consistently happens, especially at home for whatever reason.
I just don't know how many guys they need to be hitting at one time because, again, they got 4 guys who are hitting in this lineup right now, and they still can't get it done. They got 9 hits last night and only 1 run, and that's where it comes down to getting guys on base isn't so much the issue right now. They are getting guys on base, but it's like, can this team string together 3 big hits in a row? Like, I'm looking last night, and you start off, you had the Ramos got the base hit, then Rafi hits a double, and can you get a 3rd hit in a row? Well, I mean, Willie Adames gets into a force out, to a fielder's choice that scores a run. That's not really a hit. You didn't get your 3 hits in a row there. The rest of the night, though, is just you're incapable of stringing 3 hits in a row together. Meanwhile, the Mets, I mean, they basically start off with a couple hard hits, but you're talking about, in that 4th inning where things really kind of got blown open, Beatty gets the base hit, Alvarez gets the base hit, and Mauricio draws the walk, which they say a walk is as good as a hit. I mean, could the Giants get 3 guys on in a row like that? At some point, it's that when they can start doing that more consistently, that's when you're going to see this team start to really take off. But until then, it's like a car just stuck in neutral right now. 888-957-9570 is the number. Want to hear from Giants fans. What do you make of this team right now? What moves do they need to make? So let's go out to the lines here. Let's go to one of our favorites, Mitch in New Jersey. Mitch, Josh Naylor no longer on the board, man. Who are we going for now?
You took the words right out of my mouth. How you doing, Dan? Sam, how's it going?
It's going, Mitch.
I want to apologize to you, Sam. 2 weeks ago, it must be my hearing. Somebody I thought you said Sam Lev. It's Logan. My mistake. My fellow one.
Yeah, Lubman. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it sounded like Levin. I want to apologize.
It's not the worst mispronunciation I've ever heard.
Well, I'm talking about it here. I heard totally different. So that's on me.
It's all good.
Definitely. Thank you. I couldn't believe it. They were going to move in. The Giants was slow at the wheel. How about the third baseman? I know we have a third baseman. I think he'll come back. I know he's 32, but that's not that old. I hope Chapman can pick it up. Our line's not that bad, but we can use another hitter. I don't even care if we have a pretty good play at the same position. I mean, Derek Jeter and A-Rod, they work together. They manage. They play in the same field. One just move one spot over. So I'm hoping maybe Caminero from Tampa. And then, of course, Oakland. I know we can't get he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. That last night cemented him being the Rookie of the Year.
Oh, Nick Kurtz?
Sacramento Athletics.
Oh, that
Nick
was,
Kurtz,
yeah.
Shout out Big Amish. 4 home runs, becoming the first in the history of Major League Baseball to do it as a rookie.
Yeah. No, that was pretty good. Right. Mitch, I don't think the A's are giving up their leading Rookie of the Year candidate, though. But I think
I was thinking more like Butler or Rooker.
Oh, Rooker. Rooker would be an interesting one. Again, they could probably DH him, keep Wilmer off the bench, maybe put him out in left field there. Brent Rooker will be an interesting one there, so thank you there for the call, Mitch. The problem with the A's in making trades is that they're kind of in a situation where they need to be spending money to where if they don't spend it, they don't get their welfare check. And so that might kind of slow the A's ability to that might hinder the A's ability to want to make some trades there. So, again, thanks for the call, Mitch. Next one, go out to, we're up against it here. Alex in Atlanta, I see you. I'm going to get you on the other side. We are up against it here, so I don't want to bring you on right before we're going to a break because I know you got a lot to say, and I don't want to have to cut you off just so we can get to the break on time. So we're going to go to the break right now. I'll get you on the other side. Again, just a lot. So, yeah, Joe. Let's say what we want to say here. George Conto's coming up at 10:30. Tripped over my words there. A lot more Giants talk to come. We'll talk about what Landon Roop had to say last night about his elbow injury and what Bob Melvin had to say about it as well. Talk about that on the other side, as well as get to Alex in Atlanta. All that's going to be brought to you by Fremont Bank. Here for you, here for good.
the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap. The best Giants talk in the Bay on 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back to the Wrap. Sam Lubman here with Dan Devone. Morning after a brutal 8-1 loss at the hands of the Mets for the San Francisco Giants. And some big news broke yesterday, Dan, and that was the news that Landon Root will be placed on the 15-day injured list with some elbow inflammation. The expectation is that the Giants did catch it early enough that will not linger around. We'll get to that in a sec. But first, I want to go out to the lines, 888-957-9570, as we are coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios, Laughing Monk Righteously Brewed in San Francisco. We're going to go to one of our favorites, Alex in Atlanta. Alex, how are we doing today, our night of numbers?
Well, gentlemen, look, this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but I am where I was Monday morning when I called into the station Tuesday morning after a brutal loss to the Braves. And that is, I think you look to move off some players at the deadline. I don't think you add. The main reason is, you guys have talked about it ad nauseum. I think you have too many needs right now that one trade deadline period is going to fill for you, and you don't have a ton of assets that you can make appealing in trades at the moment to a lot of teams around the league. The ones you do have, I'm going to mention here in a second, but I think there are too many holes to try to fill. You're battling the injury bug at the wrong time. You're battling a ton of inconsistency with the offense pretty much all season. At this point, I think you do have to look at the offseason where you retool and add to this team and accept that maybe it's time to move off some players at the deadline if you can. I think you look to move off a Wilmer Flores or a Mike Yastrzemski, if not both, because there are playoff teams that would look at situational hitters right now. Both of those players are on expiring contracts. Yaz is an above-average defensive outfielder, and that's a need for some playoff teams as well. And I think you do have to listen to offers for Robbie Ray. The reason I mention that is because he's only got 1 year left on his deal after this season. He is going to be 34 next year. This is probably the highest value he has right now as an asset on your team. And I think you do have to consider, look, you have so many holes in your starting rotation right now that you're not going to be able to fix at the trade deadline. Starting pitching is at a premium. I think you take advantage of that.
Hold on, Alex,
and you try to move Robbie Ray.
Alex, hold up here. You say there's too many holes here. I mean, I know this team definitely has needs, but when you say there's too many holes, what are the too many holes that outside of starting pitching that you're concerned about right now?
Well, I mean, Again, there's no rational way, as Dan mentioned, to explain the fact that you're struggling at so many places on offense. I think you do have some players who are miscast defensively right now. Wilmer Flores is a great example of that. I don't think he's an everyday first baseman. I know we've been using Dom Smith, and I don't know if he's a long-term answer, but if you're going to move Rafi Devers there, ideally you put someone with a better, more consistent bat at the DH role, and I don't think that's Wilmer, so I would move off of him. I think you don't have a true cleanup hitter in this lineup right now. I think you have guys like Casey Schmidt, who I like as a hitter, but he's miscast at second base defensively. You have Elliot Ramos right now who's struggling in the outfield. You have too many things that you have to make up for in one trade deadline or have to try to fix in one trade deadline that I think it's better to try to move off pieces right now and look to 2026.
Well, let's say you move off Robbie Ray, what does that mean then for 2026? Because then you have Logan Webb and you do have Landon Root, but then you got a lot of question marks after that. I mean, Robbie Ray, he's not just important for this year, he's important for next year too. So, if you're going to move off a guy like him, doesn't that kind of set you back for next year a little bit?
Well, that's true. There's a possibility of that, but there's also the possibility that that Hayden Birdsong finds himself down in AAA and improves over the offseason, improves in spring training next season, and you can turn him into a legitimate starter. I'm not saying a number 2, but potentially maybe a number 3 and 4, and you look for a number 2 in free agency when the value is a little lower.
Awesome. Good stuff, Alex. Thanks for the call. Really appreciate it there. So Alex thinks the Giants would sell. I respectfully disagree on that one. I think this
I like the take, though.
Yeah, no, Alex always has well thought out takes. That's why he's the knight of numbers. He does something statistical for his job. So he's a big number cruncher, that guy, and we love having him on. He's one of our premier roasters. But no, I don't think this team's in a position where they are going to sell. I do understand the appeal of moving off of Yastrzemski and moving off of Wilmer Flores. You're not getting anything back significant for them. You're getting a lottery ticket back, if anything.
Rearranging the deck chairs.
Exactly. if you're moving off of a Yastrzemski, if you're moving off of a Flores, you're doing so because you just don't want anyone there taking playing time away from Luis Matos. You're doing that because maybe you're doing that because you want to bring Bryce Eldridge up and have him get some time at first base without Wilmer Flores getting in the way there. So a move like that, it's not so much to bring someone in as much as it is to create more opportunity for someone else. So that's what those moves would be.
Maybe I misunderstood. I just needed some clarification from stats. Alex out there in Atlanta, he wants the Giants to sell for prospects. Is that it? What is it what's the plan here? Maybe I misunderstood.
Well, again, like I said, if you're selling Yaz and Flores, you're doing it to open spots up. Robbie Ray might be able to net you something. I don't. Again, a starting pitcher he's not on the Cy Young shortlist, but he is an all-star. He's been one of the elite starting pitchers in the league. For a lot of teams, he would be a great number two.
So prospects, you're talking about getting.
Yeah,
we're
Robbie
talking
Ray.
Because when you sell, typically you're looking to build for the future by getting prospects. We're talking about getting some potential assets that can come to fruition 3 to 5 years from now.
And that's kind of where I hesitate on trading Robbie Ray, because if I'm going to trade Robbie Ray, I want someone who can help me next year. Because this team I believe, is a win-now team based on how they're constructed, based on the moves that have been made, and based on the fact that Buster Posey's basically said this team is trying to win right now. So that all makes me think that the goal is to win right now, as well as try and win next year. And then, Dan, you got a lot of uncertainty after that because, we have labor issues going on. There is a CBA that's expiring at the end of 26, and relations between the Players Association and Major League Baseball are at an absolute nadir right now, which is to say that we might have a work stoppage in the 2027. Yeah, it is. We might have a work stoppage. It could wipe out a chunk of the season. It could wipe out all of the season. And so you got this year and next year are guaranteed right now. I think if you're the Giants, you got to try and maximize that window, because I'm not sure what this league and what this team is going to be looking like coming out on the other side of 2027.
Yeah, and who cares? I mean, I know you should care, but as a fan...
Well, as a fan, I don't care. I know as a fan, you shouldn't care, but if you're Buster Posey and if you're the Giants, these are the real questions you got to be asking yourselves here.
Yeah, but I think Buster Posey's telling everybody that I didn't come out of retirement, semi-retirement, or living in Atlanta to rebuild and look for 3 years from now. It's all about right now. It's a plug-and-play team, and it's about winning today. It's about winning tomorrow. It's about beating the Mets today and getting into the postseason and getting back to that elusive World Series. So that's the mode operandi, if you will. So I can't, I'm one of those fans that's just, what happened yesterday and what's going to happen today in terms of 2027, like my head explodes. I have no idea if any of us will be here in 2027. I have no idea but I think that's the outlook is about winning today. And I don't see how anybody could look at this Giants team and say that they're not built to win in 2025 and look to advance in the postseason right now. There's nothing about that team that would say otherwise, unless I'm misinterpreting something here.
Well, I mean, you're basically, if they're going to be that team, you basically need them to play a brand of baseball that they haven't played.
Well, no, that's up to the play.
Yeah.
I read this past week. At some point, Buster Posey just says, hey, listen, man, I'll get you players, but at some point it's on you, Bob Melvin. Mm-hmm. It's on you, Rafi Devers. It's on you, Willie W. You have to hit the damn baseball. You can't keep looking to me and saying, well, what are we going to do? Go get us the savior. Take us to the promised land.
No,
Buster Posey's like, I don't play
anymore. He did
anymore.
that. He kind of did that already. And that's where I think Buster Posey is still not going to sell, because Buster's guy, he stands by his words. When he says, I trust the coaches, he's going to give Bob that option. When he says it's time to go and he's trying to fire at the players, then he'll go out and make the move to bring in Rafi Devers. Like, Buster's a guy who, when he says something, he stands by what he says. And when I see when Buster's saying, we're in the memory-making business, which was part of this show's open, it just, you don't make memories by not making the playoffs. And I think Buster knows that this team has not been to the playoffs in 3 years now. The one playoff appearance they have had in the last 8 years, most people have kind of washed from their memories because we want to pretend that 2021 never happened for some reason. This is a team that I think just desperately needs to make the playoffs. Buster Posey is the guy who desperately wants to see this team in the playoffs. And I just have a hard time seeing him backing down at this point in the year, especially when he knows that the right deal could galvanize this team and unlock that next level out of them down the stretch here, especially at a time when you do see your bats getting hot and when you do trust that your pitchers will get off of this cold streak that they're on. Again, I know it's crazy to say this based on how this team is playing right now, and if they had won 8-1 last night, it would have been a lot easier to say this, but there is still, as you said, I believe there is a better baseball team within this team that is just waiting to be unlocked right now. We've seen flashes of it. We're getting close to it. They just need that one little piece in the rotation to kind of tie things together and try and make a run here. I want to see this team make a run. Like Buster has said, I don't know why you're not always trying to win. That should always be the goal. And so, yeah, I can't see him with that mentality just being like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back this first year, punt on making the playoffs, and regroup this offseason. That's just not a mentality I see Buster having.
Well, let me just ask you this. Let's just say that he can't pull the trigger for that veteran pitcher or improve the team at the deadline. Let's just say he gets outbid. He just doesn't have enough assets. That's not on Buster. At some point, that's on you, Melvin. That's on you, Adames. That's on you, Chapman. Brian Sabian used to say this. Hey, listen, man, I can only do so much. At some point, you have to produce. Okay, I got you, Devers, for crying out loud. So, Devers, be that guy that we're giving upwards to $300 million for the next 9 years. At some point, you have got to deliver. You can't continually look at Buster Posey and say, hey, go get us help. Well, he's done that. And so we're at that fork in the road now where, yeah, they need help, but you can't put all this on Buster Posey saying, go find the magic seeds, because he got you Adames, you re-signed Chapman, you look pretty good.
He's done a lot already.
You got Devers, you just signed Jung-Hoo Lee, Elliot Ramos is promising, so play baseball.
Yeah.
Win some damn games.
And this is where again, Dan, I've been very vocal on not blaming the coaches this year. And this is where I start to kind of side-eye the coaches a little bit. I do believe, yeah, it is on the players. The players have to play. And I know Alex in Atlanta, he's been very adamant that Pat Burrell is the issue that needs to be taken care of here. And again, I've watched Burrell work with these players. I like how he works with these players. Again, I love watching him stand behind the cage and barking out, all right, 2-2 count, and there's a runner on second. He's so good at putting these mindsets into these players. But there's been a couple times this year, Dan, where I see Pat say in pregame, he says that situation to a hitter, and then that hitter comes up in the game in that situation, and it's like whatever you were working on in the cage, you just completely forgot about it. It's hard for me to blame the coaches there. That said, though, the players got to elevate their game, and at some point, it's like, don't you want to elevate your game for your coach? Don't you want to play a little bit harder for Bob Melvin? We used to always joke on the morning
roast. Today's players play for themselves.
We had a joke on the morning roast a year ago that, as the Warriors are going to the final stretch there, they had a game against the Blazers in that last week of the year. And we're like, well, that's an easy win. And Bonte, says, well, I don't know. They're going to be playing hard for Chauncey Billups. That could be a tough game. And we joked about it, the win one for Chauncey game. That game ends up coming up, Warriors at Blazers. I think it was the second or third to last game of the year. It was a tough game. The Warriors won, but it was not easy. So yeah, sometimes a team will play hard for their coach, or sometimes a team will just be a difficult one to get. But I do think a similar principle is here. These guys, they got to like playing for Bob Melvin. And if these guys aren't elevating their game, if they're not making these adjustments that the coaching staff is asking them to make, my question is, well, why is that? At some point, I feel like that becomes a reflection of the coaching staff.
You know what? I'm with you there. And just to get back to why I don't buy into players playing for coaches or win one for the team, I know that goes against everything we think. It's that they're on personal contracts, and it's so cutthroat, especially when it gets to the NFL. You're taking care of yourself and your family at the end of the day. And the reason why you don't necessarily buy into, well, let me just sacrifice, or I want to win for the team or win for the manager, because at the end of the day, the team is also just looking out for themselves. Because should you slip a little bit, you as a player, should your numbers decrease a little bit, the team's not like, well, let's hang on to this particular player because he's a good guy. No, The bottom line is the
Good
bottom
vibes
line.
guy. Yeah.
The bottom line is the bottom line. We'll move off on you as quick as we got you, okay? Especially in the NFL. So the culture that's been created in professional sports, unfortunately, it's a bit selfish. Players are about themselves. Well, they'll certainly want to win games, but in terms of taking it to the point where I want to win for the manager or I'm willing to sacrifice for the good of the team, I think that's sort of
You don't believe in that anymore?
No. I mean, you want to win. The Giants, you buy in as a group that you want to win. You get along with this camaraderie. But in terms of winning for the manager, you're just knocking on the wrong door when it comes to that
I
sort
still
of thing.
think there's a little bit of that. I do think there is some of that with this team. I do think this team last year, I think, bought into Bob Melvin. I don't know if that, I assume that is the case this year, but based on the performance I'm seeing, maybe it is kind of becoming more of that case there. But, and again, that is though where I do start to look at the manager, where it's just like, you got to find a way to inspire more buy-in from your players.
Yeah, I'm with you there. See, I've never been a big Bob Melvin guy. So I think that game on Monday night, last Monday rather, against Atlanta, where they
made every single mistake possible.
That to me, that's a manager's fault. And I know you can blame Elliot Ramos. You can talk about the confusion with Jung Hoo Lee, but that's on you. You don't have your team prepared to play, and these are repetitive mistakes. And so you can't fire the team. And I'm not saying get rid of Bob Melvin, but I don't think that he can withstand a couple of more games like that. I don't. To me, when you look at this team, the more we sit here and saying, "Hey, man, Sam, this doesn't make any sense." This is a team that has a good lineup. Why the hell aren't they winning?
All the pieces are there. Yeah, all the signs are there.
And you're making these sort of mistakes. A lot of it is just simply the guy in charge and a lot of this is intangibles. It's just the players are not coming to the park focused, or you need to make a change for the sake of making a change and bring somebody in there, whether it's younger, that re-energizes this team so that they come to the park every single day and they're fully realizing their capabilities. Because what happens, more often than not, it's not as though Bob Melvin got stupid overnight. He's still, in terms of X's and O's and schematics, he knows what the hell's going on. But when you lose that chemistry and your team doesn't, quote unquote, respect you or is not coming in mentally prepared, it's time for him to go. And I know that sounds really cutthroat because people love Bob Melvin, but when you see games like that last Monday, that to me, it's a cause and effect with you being the team and your manager.
The word that kind of came up a little bit on Tuesday morning, Dan, was accountability. Where is the accountability? When I see guys making the same boneheaded mistakes in the field, when I see Ramos constantly going in on balls that he should be going out on, and when I see him constantly, I have never seen a player drop the ball while exchanging it from his glove to his hand as much as I've seen Ramos do it this year. When I see, again, I'm not just trying to pick on Ramos. There's a lot of guys, but
the running mistakes.
The base running mistakes. Oh, everyone's made the base running mistakes, and including Elliot Ramos. And again, I'm not trying to pick on Ramos. You've seen Jung Hoo Lee too.
I don't think Brett Wisely's ever seen a stop sign that he's liked.
No, that's the Brett. Well, he's on base like 4 times a year, so he's not like he really knows what to do there. But Jung Hoo Lee, you're seeing it. He's not adjusting to those outside pitches. When you see guys making these mental mistakes over and over and over again, it's like at some point you got to stop burning your hand on the hot stove. And that's what I do. Again, I look at the manager in that situation. How are you holding these guys accountable? How are you holding their feet to the fire over these mistakes and putting them in a situation where they have no choice but to work on these issues? And I don't know exactly what the solution for those are, but you got to be doing something there, because when it's the same things over and over and over and over again, that tells me that your players are A, tuning you out, or B, you're just not holding your players accountable enough. Either way, it's an unacceptable situation.
Yeah, I remember Mike Holmgren once told me this, and Bill Walsh also.
Just had Mike Holmgren on the Morning Roast the other day, actually.
They talked about, it's not as though Bob Melvin, again, is not a smart guy. It's just like when your message isn't resonating anymore and it becomes stale. And Holmgren said, when you've been someplace, and he hasn't been there very long, talking about Bob Melvin, but when you've been in baseball, I guess, for a long period of time, Holmgren said, when I was a coach for 10 years in Seattle, it's sort of time for me to go. It's not as though I got stupid. It's just that my message isn't resonating.
The voice gets stale.
It's not hitting home as it once did. And the same with Bill Walsh, the genius. After 10 years, he said, it's time when you're going down the freeway to roll down the window and get some fresh air in.
And again, two years into Bob's tenure, I think it's a little early for that. But I do think, though, because what's even more interesting is one of the leaders in this clubhouse is Matt Chapman, who is a Bob Melvin guy. He came up under Bob Melvin. So it should not be that hard to fall in behind Bob Melvin because Matt Chapman is a guy that guys in this clubhouse will fall in behind. Matt Chapman and Willie Adames are just total best bros on this team. If they're in behind Bob Melvin, you would think the rest of the clubhouse is falling in behind Bob Melvin, which none of these things are adding up though, which is what's crazy. You have guys who should be buying, by all intents and purposes, should be buying into Bob Melvin, but their performance suggests that they're not. You have all these guys that should be hitting well, but what we're seeing on the field is that they're not, even though they're all hitting well over 300 over the last several games, but they're not doing it in a row. Nothing about this team makes sense. Nothing about what's working with this team makes sense. Nothing about what doesn't work with this team makes sense. It's just, it's so vexing right now.
And you know what you're describing more often than not is that there's something amiss that we can't see, and that's usually a disconnect. This isn't a...
You can't put your finger on anymore. There's something intangible going on behind the scenes.
And I'll take it a step further. There's usually a disconnect with the manager and the players. And I'm not saying that the players are chirping because they don't like Bob Melvin, but there's something that's not connecting under the hood there. And usually when you're talking about the inner workings of a team, it usually starts at the top.
Yeah, and Buster has taken the blame for the issues already on this team already. He has said, if you're going to point anyone, point fingers at me. I built the team. And that's his way of kind of put things on the players. I kind of wonder, this is going into the realm of hot take territory here. This is just a random hot take thought. I don't have any real intel or anything like this that would suggest this is true. I'm just going to throw out this wild hypothetical here.
You just described the premise of like every YouTuber and
basically,
basically every show in America.
I'm going to go full first take here and just say something baseless with no evidence to back it here.
You're hired.
There you go. But what I'm kind of wondering is so much emphasis, especially back in May, was put on it's the players that have to be better. It's on the players. Buster Posey called out the players. It's time to go. He, put his faith behind the coaching staff, not the players. I wonder if there's a part of me that wonders is all the emphasis that was put on, no, it's the players that have to be better. It's the players that have to do this. It's the players that have to do that. If there was a little too much of that to a point where it irritated the players maybe a little bit. And maybe that created a bit of a schism, so to speak, between the players and the coaches in the front office, where the players think, hey, we're going out here and doing the best we can to get our numbers. We've seen Adames, he's coming around getting his numbers. Chapman's getting his numbers. Like, we got guys who are working to put the work in to get it done. But what about, what is the accountability on the coaching staff on getting us ready and putting us in a position to succeed? Again, not saying this is the case, but I'm got to be curious again because these are human beings in there. If there is a level of just like, well, hold on, we're trying to do our job. What about you guys? Where's the blame on your end? And that, again, a theory, a thought, a take that I'm throwing out there. I don't know if that sounds like something that has any merit, but I do wonder if there is some sort of disconnect there. I haven't sensed any of it from what I've been around this team, but there's also a lot from this team that I don't see that I'm not around. So there could be things that I'm missing that could buy in. I don't know. Do I sound too much of a tinfoil crackpot when I say that? Or,
well, I would just say as a player, if you're mired in a slump and you're not performing, they'll always interpret that as that's on me. You can point fingers at coaching, but you're going to look silly if you do publicly. And so this just becomes at the end of the day, if a player is not performing, especially if you're Jung Hoo Lee and you're getting rewarded with a healthy contract, or if you're Rothy Devers and you're going in that, that initial month slide, the first month you're with the San Francisco Giants, there's only one way to sort of explain that away, and that's to internalize it and saying that's on me. I don't know if there's any other way to interpret when a player's not going well, to blame anybody other than themselves. Certainly not the coaching.
Well, yeah, there is a level of just you got to own up to your mistakes, and so yeah, I would hope, again, that's what I was throwing out, and I put as many qualifiers on it as I did to showcase how not serious that theory should be taken. But it is something that I'm going to be honest, I might be keeping an eye on now in terms of the rest of the year, is just what is this dynamic going to be like in the clubhouse between the players and the coaching staff? Because again, Dan, like it's the old Sherlock Holmes quote, when you've eliminated, all but the impossible, what's ever left has to be the reason or something like that. I might just butcher the quote there, but we were banging our heads to the wall trying to figure out what the issue with this team is. We refuse to believe that these hitters are just bad. We refuse to believe that the pitchers are just bad. And they do have track records. So it's like we have to look for a reason somewhere. We've eliminated all the logical reasons. So now you got to go into the illogical reasons. And that's kind of where this is taking us here. We are up against it. We got to get to break because we got to talk to George Contos on the other side. Be curious to see what he thinks of the Giants pitching situation. He was a pitcher himself back in the day when he was winning a World Series with the Giants. So we'll talk to the world champ next. And that is brought to you by Fremont Bank. Here for you. Here for good.
Now back to the best Giants talk in the Bay. The Orange and Black Weekend Wrap on 95.7 The Game.
We are back on the wrap here. Sam Lubman along with Dan Devone. Zach Green doing a hell of a job pushing the buttons behind the scenes today. Good job to you, Zach. And we are going to head out to the River Islands guest line. We got George Kontos, former reliever for the Giants, World Series champ, current host of Giants pre- and post-game on NBC. So again, he joins us on the River Islands guest line. George, how are you doing this morning?
Fellas, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How about yourselves?
Doing as well as you can be the morning after an 8-1 drubbing like that. And George, what made last night really tough was watching Logan Webb for the third start in a row get hit really, really hard. This is not something that Logan usually does. He's usually good at limiting that hard contact, but he had 8 hits last night. There were 104 or more off the bat. Just what were you seeing from Logan Webb last night, and just what have you been seeing from him over these last couple starts for him on the mound?
You know, it's unfortunate when you get so expected to seeing your ace go out there and just dominate every single time he toes the rubber every fifth day, that when you have these little bit of lulls, it raises eyebrows a little bit more than it should. And, Logan Webb obviously is a guy who expects the highest of results from himself. So I think just when you look at kind of what his struggles have been the last few starts, it's kind of just getting ahead of guys, staying down in the zone, and of trying to avoid those pitches that leak over the middle. I mean, Logan is a guy who everyone knows when they step in the batter's box what his fantastic repertoire looks like, what he goes to in the jam, and he's done a really good job this year of protecting that changeup with his cutter and his breaking ball and the addition of a few other pitches where he keeps evolving. But sometimes when you get into a jam, you go back to Old Faithful, and when guys are looking for it, it's a little bit less effective.
Hey, George, let's talk about the back end of that rotation, and namely one Hayden Birdsong. And maybe you can talk me down off the trees here, because that I put sort of an asterisk next to, and it's a little scary because it's not necessarily that he needs to get his confidence back. We saw Duvall go down last year, and he needs to work on some mechanics or what have you. But when you're missing and you're having issues with control like he was, and I don't mean to throw out words like or names like Rick Ankiel, but do you see that there could be the potential that it's not necessarily the fundamentals of what it is that he's doing, but there might be the mental block? And once it gets between your ears, it gets really dangerous. Could you see potentially that this is something that's a lot larger because he has to clear some mental hurdles in terms of locating the plate again?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the things that have caused Hayden Birdsong to struggle, in my opinion, from what I've watched, are very much mental. I mean, you get a little bit into that bad mental capacity where you're having a hard time throwing a strike, then you start aiming the ball, and your delivery looks like it's kind of in slow motion or underwater, and that's kind of the things that we were seeing. I mean, it's been a little bit tough for him ever since he had that little stretch in Arizona where he threw those 10 straight balls, and on the 11th he gave up that 3-run homer. It seems like that kind of just has been instilled in his memory a little bit, unfortunately. And look, the mental stuff is this game is so much more a mental game than a physical game. There's a lot of guys that have the ability, whether you're on the hitting side or on the pitching side, to play at the major league level because of tools. But what allows guys to get to the big leagues and stay there for a long period of time is putting in the work and having a good routine and having a really good mental way of kind of getting through the ebbs and flows of a season. And what you have to remember about Hayden Birdsong is he's still an incredibly young kid, and he came up last year, and there were some moments in each of his first 4 or 5 starts where the wheels could have fallen off, but he was able to work through some of those outings and make big pitches, and I really liked what I saw out of him last year. And it's just unfortunate this year that the mental part of it has just kind of really built up, and he hasn't been able to get over the hump. So hopefully he can go down to SAC and really have some good, confident games down there where he gets ahead of guys and really starts believing in his stuff again and his ability to throw strikes, because when he's at his best, he's incredibly hard to hit.
Yeah, George. And then George Kontos here joining us on the River Islands guest line here on the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap. George, last night we got some news that broke. Landon Roop going on the IL, the 15-day IL with elbow inflammation. Landeroop chatted with us last night. He seems pretty confident that, he's not going to miss a ton of time for this. The Giants feel very optimistic they caught it early here. But when you see a headline like that, elbow inflammation in a young pitcher who is approaching his professional career high in innings, what kind of goes through your head when you hear news like that? And is this a situation where just by, they did catch it early, does that kind of give optimism that it won't devolve into a worse health issue for Landon's elbow?
I think there should be this should be viewed incredibly optimistic. I mean, I saw the report where the MRI came back clean. It was just a little bit of inflammation. And look, he's thrown 101 innings so far this year, and his career high at any level is 107. So while that's something that a lot of people might tend to focus on, that's not something that I'm really worried about, just because he has the ability to go 30, 40, 50 more. And at least this is just my perception, but I think that he can go further than his innings limit, and I don't think it'd be a huge deal for him. I mean, if he's going to get 170, 180 innings, yes, that's a red flag. They would never let him get that far. But if he goes 30, 40 past, that is how you build guys up year after year to ultimately reach that possibility of throwing 180 to 200 innings. But these innings are a lot different than he's ever thrown in his entire career. I mean, he broke out of camp as the number 5 starter in the rotation. These innings have a lot more meaning behind them because they're at the major league level, and this team is trying to fight to get to the postseason and to win another World Series. And there's a lot of meaning behind every time he takes the mound every 5th day. But it's the timing of it is obviously incredibly unfortunate. He's been pitching so well. The leaps and bounds he's made from the beginning of this season to how he's been pitching lately before he just went on the IL was really fun to watch, and nice to see his maturation as a starting pitcher at this level. But like you said, I mean, it's just a little inflammation. Hopefully it's the minimum, stay on the IL, and he can get himself back feeling the way that he was and continuing to help this team down the stretch in August and September and October.
George, during at any point in your playing career, did you ever deal with elbow inflammation? And if you did, like, what does that feel like? What does a pitcher going through elbow inflammation like that, like, what is that like for a pitcher?
Yeah, actually, I did have Tommy John, but that was not at the major league level. I had Tommy John in 2009 when I was still in AAA as a starter with the Yankees, and that process went very smoothly. I came back, and then the only other injury I had ever had in my career was in 2016. Coming out of spring training, I had a little bit of a barky elbow, and right there in your elbow where everything kind of connects, you have a few things that are right there. You have your UCL, obviously. You have your flexor tendon and your flexor mass, and then everything kind of attaches right there at that bone, at that joint. So in 2016, in April, I had a little bit of flexor tendonitis, and it got to the point where, in the first 3 or 4 series that we played in, I was able to just kind of get by and rest it. But those things need rest because you continue, especially as a reliever, you continue to go out there and get it going and activated. And throwing is obviously a very regular part of your job when you're in the bullpen. You could pitch 2-3 days in a row. You can pitch, 5 out of 7, however it may go. And every time that you reactivate that, it got a little worse. And I remember I had my last outing before I finally said something to Dave Greshner was in LA. I came in, I warmed up in the bullpen, and it was manageable. But once you get into the game and that extra 10% gear kicks in with the lights and the fans and facing a real hitter, that first pitch I threw, I really felt it. And thankfully, Justin Turner swung at the first pitch. It was a slider. He popped it up to end the inning. And I came in and I just said, I think there's something going on. And luckily it was just a little bit of inflammation again. And I only missed about 14 or 15 days and I was back in action. But it's one of those things where you really got to look out for yourself because A, it's your career, and B, you're trying to help your team win. And if you go and get yourself hurt for an extended period of time, it's no good for anybody involved. So it's good to take care of yourself because ultimately you got to be going out there as a reliever as often as the phone rings or as a starter every 5th day to help your team win.
Help us explain away the offense and more precisely the lack of hitting with runners in scoring position, because I can't do it anymore. It makes no sense. I mean, these are obviously players they have history. They have proven track record with the Adamises and the Devers and Chapman. And Yet time and time again, and more often than not, these good hitters, especially at home, when there's an opportunity to drive in runs, they come up short. Again, I've run out of words to try and put my arms around it and explain it away. What do you think, George? What's going on with this team from an offensive standpoint?
Well, I think you've just kind of spoken every Giants fan and everybody who watches Giants baseball's thoughts on that matter. Obviously, I mean these guys are way too good to have these types of struggles with runners in scoring position. You know, I agree with you, but you know they are very aware in that clubhouse of their struggles in that regard. We are all talking about it all the time, so there obviously is a little bit more pressure in those situations. That's not an excuse by any means. I feel like if you ask anybody in that locker room that's in the lineup every night, they're going to say, yeah, we need to do a better job with runners in scoring position. But I think it's just something that it might be a little bit of a mental thing where they're very aware of how they've been doing with runners in scoring position. And when you get into those situations, a lot of the times, especially when you're tense, you don't swing as freely and you don't pick as good of pitches to hit, and you press and you kind of expand your zones. And I think all of the above is what we've been seeing a little bit when it comes time in those crunch time situations with runners in scoring position.
George, you got George Contos here joining us on the River Islands guest line, a former Giants reliever, 2012 World Series champ, and part of the pre- and post-game show on NBC Sports Bay Area. George, it is the trade deadline this week. Giants are 4 games above 500 now, and it seems like the last couple years we've come into the deadline where it's the Giants are kind of playing this game of show us why there should be a player added to this team. When you look at this team right now, do you see a team where, like Buster, do you expect Buster to kind of be aggressive at this trade deadline, or is this a team where maybe they make a small move on the margins and they just point at Rafi Devers as the big deadline acquisition?
No, I definitely think that Buster's going to be bullish on this trade deadline. I mean, when you look at the way that things sit right now, obviously you're 7 games behind the Dodgers, which may seem like a lot, but a good week of baseball changes that in an absolute heartbeat. And you're 1 game behind the Padres for that last wild card spot. So, if you look at just the recent performance, the team coming out of the All-Star break has gone 2-6 now with that loss to the Mets last night. But a good week of baseball, and we're in a totally different situation. So I think that Buster's going to be very bullish, looking to add to really help this team finish strongly in the last 60 games of the season.
And I don't mean to potentially put you on the spot here, but are there any names you've seen floating around on the trade market that you think would just that guy would look great wearing orange and black?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always those names that are starting to pop up. I mean, you look at the teams that are going to be sellers. I mean, a couple names on the market that I think would fit really nicely, especially with kind of what's been going on with the Giants' rotation lately. If you were going to look to upgrade the rotation, a guy that you obviously would love to have would be somebody like Sandy Alcantara. Another guy from the Miami Marlins is his buddy Edward Cabrera. Both guys who are having really, really good seasons. Not sure that you would see an intra-division trade, but if the Diamondbacks were going to be sellers, Merrill Kelly is a guy that I've always really liked watching him pitch, and he's a guy in big situations who's a gamer. The Pittsburgh Pirates are coming into town. Mitch Keller, he could be a guy that they move at the deadline. A guy like Seth Lugo from the Kansas City Royals, I could see him being a nice fit. Guys that give just versatility to the rotation. And then you have, obviously, at the end of September and into October, you can never have enough bullpen arms. You can never have too many guys at the end of that bullpen. We saw it on the 2 championship teams that I was on in 2012 and 2014, just how important those bullpen guys are. And then we unfortunately saw it again in 2016 with the kind of closer by committee, 2016, the closer by committee situation where kind of game 4 against the Cubs didn't quite go our way. So you see how important those bullpen guys are. So I would imagine you can never have enough depth at the back end of that bullpen when you're making a run in September and October. But as far as the offense, I mean, I think that if these guys get all firing together at the same time, this offense could do a lot of damage. I mean, we saw them in Atlanta just put up 5, 9, and 9. And unfortunately, you lost that first one just with the kind of explosion of runs in that first inning against Hayden Birdsong. But the offense obviously has the capability of going out there and putting up a number of runs.
All right, then last one here, George. And I'm sorry, I totally shorted you a championship. 2012 and 2014 World Series champion George Kontos joining us on the River Islands guest line. My last question here for you, George, is you mentioned the bullpen here, and a guy out of the bullpen who's had a really rough year this year is Ryan Walker, and he's a guy I've gotten to know him. I like him a lot. I root for him a lot. He was really good for this team the last 2 years. It's been a real struggle for him this year. His mechanics obviously have to be very specific with how he throws, but I'm just curious for you. You're a reliever. When relievers struggle throughout a season like Ryan Walker has, how difficult is it, both mentally and I guess physically, to figure out a way to right the ship and get things going again? Because with starters, you have a set, every 5 days you have an opportunity. With relievers, though, it's kind of, you're pitching today, you're pitching tomorrow, then you got a couple days off. There's not as much consistency there. How difficult is it for a reliever in a situation like Ryan Walker's? Is it to, stop the bleeding so much, right the ship, and kind of get back to being the pitcher that we saw him be the last 2 years?
Yeah, it is difficult, especially when you're one of those guys that their name can be called any day, right? And just to kind of reiterate what you said at the beginning of that, Walk I've gotten to know him very well over the last several years, and he's such a great guy. And I've had these conversations with him one-on-one several times where, he goes, I have a very unique way of throwing, and the further across your body that you throw, the more on time your delivery has to be. And obviously last year when he assumed the closer role, he caught the lightning in the bottle, and he was as dominant as any pitcher in the big leagues. And he's even said it. He goes, when you're off a little bit, it makes a very big difference. When you're off a little bit over the rubber, or when your foot lands, the miss is maximized 60 feet 6 inches away, especially with his release point and the amount of spin and sling that he has in his delivery. And when he's rolling right, you see those 97, 98 mile an hour fastballs that just kind of get on the hitters with that late dive at the end. And you see that slider that starts kind of middle away, and it has that really good horizontal runoff. All the right-handed hitters run out of bat when they're attempting to swing at it. And if you're not on time, it's just not the same. The stuff just comes out not as crisp. And when he's opening up that front shoulder a little early, the hitter can see the ball much earlier. So he's been fighting that a little bit, and it's been incredibly frustrating. But the way that you got to continue to bounce back is, and Boch, I played for Boch, obviously, my all 6 seasons that I was with the Giants. Boch was the guy at the helm, and there's nobody better, in my opinion. But if you had a rough outing, he would get you out back on the horse as fast as possible, because he did not want you to sit on a bad outing, because the longer that you wait to get back on the mound, you just get to sit there and think about that last outing that you had that did not go very well. So, Boch would, if I had a rough outing, gave up a couple runs or a homer or gave up a lead or something like that, I'd be walking out of the ballpark and he's like, Georgie, I'm going to get you back out there tomorrow. I'm going to find a spot for you, because he wanted you to get back on the horse, to right the ship, to get yourself back in that good mental space. So that's kind of the way that you have to get out of it. When you're having those outings that don't go your way, you want to get back on the horse as fast as you can, and you want to get up there and put a goose egg on the board so you can get that confidence back. And the longer you struggle, obviously, the harder it is to get yourself out of those holes, because the mental part of this game, as we mentioned earlier with Hayden Birdsong, it's so much more important than the physical. You want to be physically ready to go. You want to have your routines, and you want to have give yourself the best ability to go out there and succeed in between the white lines. But the mental part of this game, that's what makes people, big leaguers for a year or two versus 5 years versus 10 years, guys who can overcome adversity and kind of turn the page quickly. All those things are what keep you around this game for a long time. And in regards to Ryan Walker, he's a guy that works incredibly hard, and I think mentally he'll be just fine. And he'll get himself out of this, and he's going to be a really big piece in the coming months and in October for this ball club making a run.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we see how big of an impact he made last year, and it would almost be like a deadline acquisition in its own right if we can get the old Ryan Walker back. George, so great to have you on, man. Thank you very much for joining the Wrap.
I appreciate it, fellas. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks a lot. That was George Kontos, the two-time World Series champion on the 2012 and 2014 San Francisco Giants, former Giants reliever and the current host of Giants pre and post game on NBC Sports Bay Area. So a lot of interesting stuff there. I like having guys like George on just because former pitchers, especially former relievers, they know what guys like Landon Roop, like Ryan Walker, what Logan Webb, he has been in the same kind of battles, on-field battles as those guys. And I love hearing from pitchers being able to talk about what other pitchers are going through, because who better to talk to in those situations?
What jumped out at you?
Well, I thought the big thing that jumped out is, again, it's a lot of mental issues right now, especially with Logan Webb and how we all get deflated when Logan Webb has a rough start. But I think the biggest takeaway is, at talking about Landon Roop, he seems very optimistic as well that Roop will be back very, very shortly. That it'll only be the 15-day requirement there. And, I thought that's why I wanted to get him to share his own experiences when he had elbow inflammation, because it's just, I feel like, again, when you don't play the game, when you're on the outside looking in like we are, Dan, it's so many of these injuries, you don't really know what that really is. Like, what does elbow inflammation even feel like? And I love hearing Contos kind of break it down in terms of just like, the line I thought was really interesting is it'll feel one way in the bullpen, but then when you take the mound, you get that extra 10% gear, that kind of the adrenaline fires up when you get into the heat of the moment and the competition on the big league mound. It's very different. And I think just for someone like us, we're on the outside looking in, we don't know what it's like to warm up in a bullpen and then walk across the outfield grass and then take the mound on a big league mound in a big league game. We just don't know what that's like. And for a game of baseball that it's such a mental game and how much that dictates the success of a player or not, it's just, I like hearing from guys who know what that mentality is like so they can verbalize it to us so we can get some semblance of an idea of what these guys are going through.
What I find fascinating is Hayden Birdsong. And I talked to him about this because I think that's, you want my hot take? You want one that's,
let's go.
One of those guys that's,
are we going to get a tinfoil hat here?
Down in your parents' basement with, you haven't talked to anybody in 2.5 weeks and you're locked away.
Dan A. Smith right here.
There's a chance, all right? And again, this is just me, but do not be surprised if you don't see Hayden Birdsong for a very long time. A very long time. Yeah. And I've only
until
seen
like next spring, long time?
No, I mean even potentially longer than that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Again, what do I base this on? The same intel you have.
Just this seems like it could be a thing. Yeah.
And here's why.
I mean, he's 23 years old, so I mean, it's not like he's an old prospect that you need to get up. He's got a runway to work with.
Sure. But I've only seen that happen a couple of times. And one was Rick Ankiel. And so there are guys that have issues, right? Like what Logan Webb's dealing with. I don't think there's a person that really follows the Giants. Certainly you and I, we not for a moment do we not think that Logan Webb at some point will get through this and be Logan Webb again. But when you're a pitcher and you miss like he did, and it happens, and it just, all of a sudden you could just see the gremlins get into his head.
It's like a totally different pitcher all of a sudden.
Like, uh-oh, here we go. When it's mental to that level, and I love what George said, this game is everybody, when you get to this level, you have the physical tools to do it, right? What separates you, and as far as being a major leaguer and a good major leaguer, it's all about your mental approach. Do you have the ability to play every other day? Can you be good in big moments? Can you play in pressure situations?
Can you rise up when this game hits you in the mouth?
And guys react to it differently. If this predates you, I'm telling everybody, just please go Google Rick Ankiel, who is one of the star left-handed hard-throwing pitchers in baseball with the St. Louis Cardinals. I want to say the year was 2000, 2001.
Well, 2010, he had the home run off of Brian Wilson in Game 2 of the NLDS.
He was a converted outfielder at that point.
Hayden Birdsong, future right fielder.
And so the reason why is because in the playoffs, I believe it was against the New York Mets, he threw 5 wild pitches. I'm not talking about wild pitches that you were just like, it could be a pass ball. No, he hit the backstop on a fly. And you just saw in his head, like, this dude doesn't know how to throw back to the catcher anymore. And eventually it was the beginning of the end. He switched to right field. I'm just saying, when I saw Hayden Birdsong, I'm like, Yikes.
It was the misses. And again, he's still hitting 97. It's not like the stuff is not there. It's just he has no idea where it's going.
I guess my hot take is there is a weird precedence in baseball
for a guy to just lose it.
I read about this. There is a catcher by the name of Mackie Sasser who played with the San Francisco Giants. This happened to him when he was with the New York Mets. He couldn't throw back to the pitcher.
Oh, Rube Baker from Major League 2.
Yeah, he couldn't do it. And Steve Sachs from Sacramento, who was the
famous one, yeah. He had the yips
second base. He could not throw to first base any longer. So this does happen. And I hope, listen, Hayden could be back in a couple of weeks. But when you see a pitcher hit a wall mentally like that, to me, I'm sorry, there are alarms that go off like this is something that I don't just simply think going down in a brief stint in Sacramento, work on some things, and you'll be fine. Because to your point, you can simulate this to a certain degree. We won't know until he crosses that white line, gets onto a mound, because every therapist, psychoanalyst will tell you this. You do not know until you're in that situation again. And he's certainly going to be very aware of it. What's going to happen the next time you're on that main stage in front of the big lights and you're trying to clear something that has clearly become this mental obstacle? I find it sort of intriguing as well as fascinating to a certain level as well.
All right, we'll talk about that more on the other side. Also, the future of Landon Roop as well.
We will talk about that more. I feel like I just sort of warned that out, but go ahead.
Oh, we talk about a lot of things on the other side as well. Definitely want to get into what Landon Roop said about his elbow injury as well last night, so we'll talk about that. And then, yeah, Hayden Birdsong, are you still hopeful for his future? I know we're probably still hopeful for Landon Roop's future, but that would really suck if Hayden Birdsong does not pan out that way. So we are blowing through this break, and that is brought to you by Fairmont Bank. Here for you, here for good. And I guess there's 2 bobbleheads they're giving out tonight. There's the special event Steph Curry superhero bobblehead, which they say it's Steph Curry, and I'll just take their word for it. It in no way, shape, or form looks like Stephen Curry. And then they have the I guess mass-produced one that they're giving out to, I believe it's the first 15,000 fans. And that's him. He's wearing a Giants jersey, and he's just kind of, chilling on a baseball bat that he's like using as like a walking stick or something like that, which I don't know. I'd rather have like Steph Curry shooting a 3 in a Giants jersey as a bobblehead, but I don't know. That's
Has there ever been in the history of bobbleheads been a good one?
Yes.
Which
lots
one?
Of them. Oh, lots of them. I have a massive collection of bobbleheads.
No, I mean in terms of it being a good portrayal, or at least
they actually look like them?
Look like the player that's being
the
depicted.
Crazy Crab bobblehead I have looks a lot like the Crazy Crab. But no, I thought you were saying like a good bobblehead that just like it looks cool.
No, I mean, is there? I actually had this is going to be the ultimate drop. I had a bobblehead. This is at Safeco or Quest Field. There was a Dan Devone bobblehead, believe it or not, and they also did
Dan Devone bobblehead.
Oh, it was so brutal. And they did a Jones. Is it Jones soda? Do you remember that?
I don't.
Where they literally had my picture on a soda. I believe it was Jones soda that would use actual people. Their faces on soda pop, on a soda bottle. I want to say it was Jones. I could be mistaken. Anyways, my point is those things, man, they are not flattering. There's never been a bobblehead where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good depiction of this particular player or former player.
I'm looking it up now, see if I can find this Dan Devone bobblehead online.
You
but
won't find it.
What
about Jones? Is it Jones soda that did the?
Jones, so you need to maybe look that up. But I feel like part of like I feel like a bobblehead, it can't look exactly like, it has to be a little off, but it can't be like so ridiculously off that it doesn't look like him. Like the superhero one that they're doing, I looked at it. Dan, I don't know if you watched that show Clipped on FX. It was also on Hulu.
Oh,
it was about
Talk to me. Is it good?
It depends on how into the LA Clippers you are. It's about the Clippers during that 2013 playoff run when Donald Sterling, all that stuff happened. It's more of a Donald Sterling show, but it details his affair, the whole thing with V. Stiviano and the impact that had on the team. And I don't know if they did this on purpose or if they just didn't know what the people in the show look like. But so they had Lawrence Fishburne playing Doc Rivers. And those two look not at all much alike. And all the characters look literally nothing like the people they were playing. Blake Griffin looked like a guy in IT. DeAndre Jordan, the guy who played DeAndre Jordan was probably 7 inches shorter than DeAndre Jordan and several pounds heavier. Chris Paul looked like what Cliff Paul would actually look like.
Were they actually playing?
No. They were playing on like TV playing. But no, the actors they cast to play these players look absolutely nothing like him. And the guy playing Steph Curry, again, looked absolutely nothing like Steph Curry. The bobblehead they have for the superhero bobblehead looks like the kind of Steph Curry that would appear in the show Clipped, which had probably one of the worst casting jobs I've ever seen for all these actors.
When it comes to sports movies or shows, I am so out we're so acutely aware of these things because we do this for a living. But the minute they're like, oh, first of all, that's not plausible. Mm-hmm. That guy can't play. That is not Steph Curry. I can't watch this show. I don't care the content or how well it's written.
The guy who played Draymond Green had like an afro.
Oh.
What are we doing here? The guy playing Klay Thompson, he did not look like, he looked like Klay Thompson if Klay Thompson was Hispanic. It was comical how poorly represented these actors
That's why
were.
Quentin Tarantino is a genius. I could listen to Quentin Tarantino all day long. I think he's brilliant. I think he's a brilliant person.
He's one of my favorite directors ever, yeah.
He's one of my favorite people.
Huge Tarantino.
If you ever listen to him, watch Bill Maher on whatever his podcast is where they literally drink and smoke and they talk for 2 hours. It's the most brilliant conversation between these two men who are getting wasted at the time. But Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, I don't know if you're a Pulp Fiction fan.
Oh, of course, yeah. Seen a lot of Tarantino.
He did not want to show Bruce Willis, who was the boxer, fighting, right? You didn't see Bruce Willis boxing. You saw him afterwards, after he didn't throw the match, right? He actually knocked the guy, actually killed the guy. You just see him after the match getting into the cab, for those of you that watch Pulp Fiction, because Bruce Willis is not an athlete. If he was to depict Bruce Willis boxing, you'd be like, oh, you just lost all of your authenticity. In fact, Matt Dillon, who was initially casted to be Bruce Willis, didn't do the part because he's like, well, where's the boxing scene? I'm a boxer. I should have this. Why aren't we showing the bout? And
why are you gonna have me as a boxer?
Quentin
if I'm not
Tarantino's like, no, I don't want to do that. They did the same thing in the Michael Jordan movie, where you never heard from Michael Jordan, or you basically never saw Michael Jordan.
The shoe movie, Air or whatever.
Air, or was it Air? Or,
whatever, yeah, the movie about the Air Jordan shoes, yeah.
And the reason Ben Affleck, who directed it, he said, because we all know who Michael Jordan is. Yeah. There is nobody that I could find or I could cast that is going to look like Michael Jordan. You are going to immediately say that's not Michael Jordan. And so there's not even a reason or a point for me to try and, so you would just see a silhouette. Yeah. Or the back of this character who was portraying.
Because it's implied. And also, I mean, Michael Jordan was only so much a part of the story. I mean, the movie was about Michael Jordan, but he wasn't a part of that story. So that makes sense. But yeah, no, clipped, it was just like, you know what? We're never going to find anyone who looks like Blake Griffin. We're never going to find anyone who looks like J.J. Redick. So let's just find people who look absolutely nothing like them. Just roll with it. I thought it was funny. So anyway, yeah, I saw that Steph Curry bobblehead, and that's what I thought of there. So
what about Running Point? Is that any good? I haven't seen it.
Running Point, I have not seen that one either.
Okay. Anyway, I think it has to do with the NBA. Kate Hudson. It's apparently pretty popular.
Okay. Kate Hudson's in it now. I have to check it out. One thing we're going to check out right now is the status of one Landon Roop, who, again, Dan, he was put on the IL yesterday, 15 days. They're pretty optimistic. When I say they, I mean the Giants. I mean Bob Melvin. I mean Landon Roop. A lot of optimism that it will be a quick stay. And if you don't believe me on that, well, why don't you just hear from them himself? Here's Landon Roop on if he is worried about his elbow.
I'm not too worried about it. Last couple starts have been feeling a little tight and tightened up on me a little bit more than the last one in Atlanta. But so far with the imaging and stuff is really good news. So just the plan right now is to no throw for a week and get back after that.
And then Bob Melvin was also asked. So Bob talked before Landon, but I played Landon first. Here's Bob Melvin on his confidence of Landon returning after the 15 days.
Do you feel confident that the 15 days will be all that Landon needs before he can come back?
You never know, but yes, we are. We felt like we caught it at the right time, and he did pitch well that particular day. It just bothered him some to where I didn't let him go out for the 6th, even though his pitch count was kind of manageable. But we feel like we're in a pretty good spot with him and feel good about it being 15 days.
It was good for that guy to ask that question there. So, yeah, a lot of optimism that he will get back on time there. So does that kind of ease the anxiety that comes from a headline like that when you see elbow inflammation from a pitcher? Because Eric Miller, again, had a similar injury pop up, elbow sprain, IL. It's been 4 or 5 weeks since then. And there's a lot of Giants fans who I think would not be shocked if Eric Miller doesn't throw another pitch this year. I'm feeling not as pessimistic about Landon Roop. I do believe that he'll be back much sooner than later.
Yeah, and what sort of alleviates some of that concern is the performance of Gage, who is this left-hander that's eating up middle inning relief and has been good up to this point. When it comes to Landon Roop, it's just, again, you won't really know until he comes back, and even then, he's going to be under the watchful eye of everybody because he's in uncharted territory where he's never been pushed this far into a baseball season as a major leaguer. But the bigger concern I have going forward, obviously, is with Hayden Birdsong. But the big question going forward in the here and now is who's the starter? Is it Carson Whisenhunt that's going to start on Monday? I have a sense that he will.
Why I thought that we would find out last night who that was gonna be, and we asked Bob that, and basically it was, well, you know what? I think we have some words on what Bob said, what the rotation would look like. Here is how Bob would describe the rotation going forward.
Influx. So we have to cover Sunday. We're probably going to have to cover Tuesday. We do have an extensive bullpen right now. We'll see if we can cover the Sunday game out of the bullpen and then probably Tuesday, we're going to have to make a move. Just depends on how it goes here, these first 2 games. We have to be prepared for anything.
And then he also went on to say what the short-term rotation plan is going to be.
Sunday, we're considering doing a bullpen game. Yeah, just depends on how these next two games go. We do have a pretty extensive pen right now with Beck being here too, and we did just have the off day. Got Robbie and Webby going, so hopefully it's more in-house on Sunday.
Do you have an idea who you might go to on Tuesday and who you going to on Monday?
Well, Monday would be no, wait a minute. JV's Tuesday, so Monday it would be Sunday and Monday. Excuse me. Yeah, Sunday we feel pretty good about the bullpen. Monday we have to bring somebody up. I don't know yet.
So again, yeah, so it's going to be a bullpen game tomorrow, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on Robbie Ray to go at least 7 innings tonight so he can preserve that bullpen. And the last guy I think you really want to see come into the game tonight is Tristan Beck. I don't think you want to see Joey Lucchesi tonight either. Those are your longer arms there. So that's the near-term plan for the rotation.
Is Jelly still up?
Jelly is still up. He has been called up. He was brought back.
He started the last. I want to say. Well,
no, he started the game that
Kyle Harrison.
Kyle Harris was traded 20 minutes before.
He actually
pitched
well in that game.
It was the first time he's ever pitched, and it was the first time he'd ever started a game. And yeah, for all intents and purposes, when you're finding out 20 minutes prior to facing the defending World Series champions in LA, oh hey, we need you to go make your first start. Yeah, that's one of those ones where it's just like. There's a lot of reasons why Giants fans didn't really take that game that seriously that night. Part of it is because we were too busy looking into Rafi Devers stats. Another part of it is just like, can you really blame Sean Jelly for the struggles he had that night against the Dodgers when you consider the situation there? But I think, yeah, he's an option for an inning or two. Tristan Beck can give you 3 or 4 innings. Lucchesi can give you 2 or 3 innings. So you probably want to keep away from those guys tonight. All to say, the answer to your initial question, Dan, of who starts Monday, I would imagine Whisenhunt is in the lead for that, but it could also depend on how these next 2 games go. It might be 2 bullpen games. Who really knows right now? Maybe Buster expects to land someone in a trade between now and Monday morning who he can slot in to the rotation against the Pirates on Monday night. So there's a lot of different options they can go with. I did ask Bob any names you're considering. Bob said that, I do have names. I'm not going to tell you who they are. And Andrew Baggerly, who covers the Giants for The Athletic, does a good job doing that. He asked, is Whisenhunt on the list of names you're considering? And Bob did confirm, yes, Carson Whisenhunt is on the list of names that is being considered for Monday.
It's got to be Whisenhunt.
It just seems like the obvious choice. So yeah, I mean that's where I'm going to lean to if I'm going to put money on it, which I don't because I don't bet on sports. I would probably put it on Carson Whisenhunt being the guy on Monday night. Again, you're against a bad Pirates team. Like it feels like it'll be a good opportunity for him to get his first big league start in that situation.
I guess the bigger point in all of this is, how did we get here? All of a sudden you go from what was the strength of this baseball team that now once you get into the third guy in your rotation, it becomes a bullpen game, and then I don't know. So that pretty much sums it up where the Giants are at as far as their pitching is concerned, which was once the strength of the team. And now that you're not hitting any longer, that's a bad cocktail, man.
Well, yeah, but I think, again, this is let's look at another team, the New York Yankees, who, they're a team
struggling.
They're a team that's built on offense. When you look at that lineup, when you got the guys in that lineup, when you got Aaron Judge, the best hitter on the planet, possibly, and you got guys like Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm, Giancarlo Stanton. You got a stacked lineup there, and they've been struggling. Why are they struggling? They're not hitting all that well. And so when a team's strength starts to struggle, I think that's a little bit worse. Like, if the Giants were still pitching and playing defense well, and we were getting the same kind of piss-poor offense, it's like, that's normal, because it's as the Joker would say, it's all part of the plan. You expect the Giants to be like that. But when the offense is doing okay, but the pitching and defense struggles, but then everyone loses their minds because that's not part of the plan. With the Yankees, a similar situation. The struggles are going to be accentuated. The panic is going to be accentuated a bit because they're struggling in a way they're not supposed to struggle. When the areas that are supposed to struggle, it's okay, you'll take that. that's where I think last night's loss sucks even more, because it's the third rough start in a row for Logan Webb. He's clearly feeling it. We weren't able to pull the sound this morning. Our sound system was having some issues, but Logan Webb in his post-game pressers, he was in a salty mood after that Friday night game against the Dodgers, where he even got the win. He was kind of irritated because of how hard he got hit that night. Last night, you could also tell that he was big frustrated, and I totally understand it. He's a guy who holds himself to a very high degree of excellence, and he didn't reach that, and it wears on him a bit. And I do wonder if mentally, I wanted to ask Contos this, we didn't really get around to it though, but Dan, you remember back in 2010, 2011, whenever Tim Lincecum took the mound, they called it Happy Lincecum Day, because you felt that you're going to win that day. When you got Timmy on the mound, you're feeling like that's a W. In 2012, it was a Matt Cain day, because whenever Matt Cain was on the mound, you're feeling, oh yeah, we're good. We got Cainer on the mound. We're gonna run roughshod over these guys. Same thing with Madison Bumgarner. Mad Bum days. You always got excited for Mad Bum days, because Mad Bum days were win days. And I kind of wonder with Logan Webb, I mean, again, he's gotten screwed on the run support, but for the most part, when Logan Webb's pitching, you feel very good about your chances to win that game. And I do kind of wonder if, for the guys in the dugout, when they see their ace, their guy, their Logan Webb day guy go out and get roughed up a little bit, I am curious what the mental impact of that is on the rest of the team there. Like, dang, if our horse is getting roughed up, like, we got to step it up. It puts more pressure on the lineup now to pick up the guy who's usually picking them up. And then you kind of hear, George Contos talk about how, guys start to get tense. They start to overthink these things. I do wonder if there is a trickle effect of when your ace is struggling, what kind of a mental impact that has on the lineup as well.
Well, you would never know it, because whether the ace is struggling or otherwise, they're not hitting. So that's where it begins and ends with me. I get it. The pitching is the strength, so it's going to be accentuated, and there's even more of a concern when the strength of your baseball team is not doing well. But I would also remind people that when the Giants were doing well and winning World Series, yes, it was pitching and defense, but you were getting just enough hitting.
Timely hitting, and that's, yeah.
This is no hitting. This is nunca. You're talking about absolutely nothing here. Nada, rather. Nunca's never. Nada's nothing.
I thought you said Luka for a second, like Luka Doncic.
It's not Luka.
I don't think it would be that either.
It is absolutely, you're getting the middle of a bagel. It's nothing. And that's, again, it's not the strength, but it's still a consistent concern with this baseball team. As good as your pitching is, and as good as your defense might be, and that could be sort of like how this team is being built in terms of the architect, whoever's putting this thing together, but you still have to hit a little bit. You still got to drive in a run occasionally. You need to score more runs than the opposing team, right? So you need at least one digit or two, and this team at times cannot muster up enough runs. And I don't care how good your pitching and your defense and your bullpen is, at some point you have to hit the damn baseball.
Yeah, and again, this is where the frustration of last night really comes in, because they were getting hits last night, Dan. They got 9 hits. Earlier this week in Toronto, they somehow pulled off an amazing feat of 11 hits and no runs, something that had never, ever been done before in the history of Giants baseball. So they are getting hits now, and this is the next level of the frustration where, and I think this has been, at the end of the day, the biggest reason for the Giants' struggles this year. It's not been when the pitching doesn't come through. It's not the bullpen issues. It's not even the lack of hitting. It's the lack of hitting with a runner in scoring position. And that has been the biggest difference between what we saw this team in April and what we've seen from this team since then. In April, Dan, they were still, in the middle of the pack offensively, batting average, runs scored, all those things. But in runners in scoring position, they were hitting, I want to say, 260-something. With runners in scoring position, 277.
All those walk-offs in the beginning of the year?
Oh, yeah. They had 9 walk-offs on the year so far. So, yeah, they had around 260, 270. I'll give specific stats on the other side here. I'm going off memory on this one. Since the end of April, though, the hitting metrics have mostly been kind of similar. Batting average-wise, runs per game, BABIP, all those things. The biggest drop-off, though, has been their batting average with runners in scoring position, where they're hitting around 220 ever since the start of May. So The hitting team we saw in April was an okay hitting team. Since then, they've been an okay hitting team. The difference was, though, the okay hitting team in April was finishing the job, whereas the okay hitting team since then has not been finishing the job, and that's why they're not a great hitting team anymore, is because even when they do start to get runs going, they don't do, or once they start to get hits going, they don't turn those hits into runs. And that's where I think it's not the bullpen that's been the reason why the Giants are underwhelming. It's not the starting rotation. It's not the defense. It's not the lack of production from Willard Dibs. It's not an error from Elliot Ramos or Jung-Hoo Lee. It is a team-wide issue where everybody, when guys come up with runners in scoring position, there is an inability to get the job done in those situations. And that, more than anything, is why the Giants are in this situation.
And there's no way to fix it.
Well, the only way to fix it is to just
do it.
As they say at Nike, just do it. You know, you got to Nike that stuff, bro. That's not the actual line. But that's what they got to do, because you got to think, I like to believe that hitting is contagious. When one guy gets going, everybody else will get going too. You got 4 guys hitting in this lineup right now, and no one.
Yeah, but didn't we think that they got on track in Atlanta? That's what's so frustrating. You're like, oh, Devers is hitting, and so is Adames, and so is Chapman, and so is Elliot Ramos.
Exactly. You had 4 guys who were hitting. You think that would be enough, but then you look at the bottom of the lineup, and they're just pooing the bed for you last night, doing absolutely nothing. And it's you're getting opportunities, but then you're not cashing in. And then, of course, you get the 5th inning where you got first and second and no out. And those 3 of those 4 guys who are hitting go pop out, strike out, pop up. That's a backbreaker right there. And the Giants really did not threaten at any point after that. They did get Mike Yastrzemski to third base in the 6th inning there, but by and large, there was no fight left from the Giants after that 5th inning there. So we're going to wrap this show up on the other side. What are the expectations for the Giants going into the trade deadline? Because this is the last 30 minutes of the show before the trade deadline this Thursday. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Look to tonight's game. Can the Giants bounce back? And yeah, a lot of pressure on Robbie Ray to end this little slide here for the Giants tonight and get the Giants back in the win column. So we'll finish the wrap on the other side. That is brought to you by Fremont Bank. Here for you, here for good.
Now back to the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap. The best Giants talk in the Bay on 95.7 The Game.
30 minutes left of the best Giants talk in the game. Sam Lubman here alongside Dan Devone, Zach Green, the pride of the University of Indiana, in the back pushing all the buttons, making sure that we are staying on air. He's doing a great job today. Someone who wasn't doing a great job, at least last night, was the San Francisco Giants after they lost 8-1 to the New York Mets. They will get another chance today to go against them, as first pitch is going to be at 6:05 tonight. It will be Dave Peterson, the All-Star, going against Robbie Ray, the Giants All-Star lefty. So Giants hoping to get back into the win column tonight, because this is it's a very big week for the Giants here with the trade deadline coming up. George Kontos, we had him on at 10:30 on the River Islands guest line. You can go back and rewatch that on YouTube or on the free Odyssey app. He expects a aggressive Buster Posey this Thursday at the deadline. Dan, are you expecting an aggressive Buster Posey at the deadline this Thursday?
I sure am. Listen, if getting Rafi Devers is any sort of an indicator, move over. Here comes one. Merrill Kelly is what I want to see.
Merrill Kelly, that would probably be up there in terms of the dream for me. I think Joe Ryan, obviously, that is the pinnacle right there. That's going to be for the more desperate teams. I think a team like the Yankees or the Phillies.
I just don't know if they have enough assets for Ryan, unless you're willing to deal Eldridge.
I think the big boys in the league, those are going to be the ones who are going to be in on Joe Ryan there. I do believe that Merrill Kelly is within the Giants' price range there. If the option is Merrill Kelly or Carson Wisenhunt, I will make that trade. I would trade Wisenhunt for Kelly straight up. I would probably rather trade for Zach Gallen over Merrill Kelly straight up, just because Gallen, I think, has a little bit more team control after that. But
is he healthy again?
Gallen, he's been pitching. He's been having a rough year. That's a guy who you're probably buying low on. He's got a 5.58 ERA and 121 innings pitched, while getting about 5 runs of support per 9 innings. So he's some good stuff to like about him. That 5.58 ERA is pretty rough. He does have a FIP of 4.86 though, so there is a little bit of bad luck he's had there. So Zach Gallen could be a buy low guy who you're thinking that you can fix right now, but he still has a track record that will make him not. He'll be a more expensive buy low option, as I say something that's kind of an oxymoron there.
Well, Contos mentioned Alcantara, and his ERA is like he's almost at 7.
He's got a 6.66 ERA right now. He's got Satan's ERA. With a 4.48 FIP over 104 innings here. And he's another guy. He's getting good run support. BABIP at 297, which is about what you would expect it to be. That just, I don't know. That seems like that's a reclamation project right there, because Alcantara, he's a guy who, again, he looks like he could, a couple years ago, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. But now that feels like a lottery ticket with him. Yeah. I'm not giving up a top 10 for Alcantara right now.
So I heard this kicked around. Just food for thought. Just put pitching aside for a moment. Obviously, it's an area of need. But let's just say you wanted to you need another bat, which I think they clearly do. What do you think of Stephen Kwan?
That's one where you might need to part with Bryce Eldridge to make that happen. I know Kwan's been a guy who's popped up a little bit. He's a popular choice now. The Guardians are in the fringes of the playoff hunt. He is a local guy, Stephen Kwan.
Moscato, shout out.
Exactly. So it's the hang up I have there is, that is a price one where a lot of teams will be interested in him. It's going to take a lot to get a guy like Stephen Kwan. That being said, though, like if I'm going to move Bryce Eldridge, which I don't want to do, but if I'm going to move him for anyone, it has to be for a franchise centerpiece type player. And Stephen Kwan, I don't know if he's like a build a lineup around him kind of guy, but he's definitely he's the kind of guy who can lead a franchise. Not the leader, but one of like the number 2 or number 3 guys.
I would agree with that.
He could be part of an established franchise core. That's a guy who, you know what, if it's Eldridge for Kwan straight up, I would have to think about that one. I don't know if I would immediately say no on that one.
Okay, just for the sake of discussion, let's just say let's remove Eldridge from the equation. Elliot Ramos, part of the package.
Probably, yes. I
Elliot
think
Ramos and Wisenhunt, and maybe you have to throw in Matos and even Luciano.
Yeah, if that's the package, those 4 guys for Stephen Kwan, yeah, I feel like that sounds doable.
Yeah, but I don't think that would happen.
I mean,
I don't think it's enough.
If the Giants could come up with that kind of a package, there's a chance that someone else could come up with a better package, unfortunately. But no, I would absolutely sign off on that one. If I'm going to trade a Bryce Eldridge, yeah, I would consider it for a Stephen Kwan. I would look for other options. But if I'm moving Bryce Eldridge, it's for a guy who's going to be here for several more years. One of the big, like I said, it's got to be like a Gunnar Henderson type guy. Like the people who I would move Bryce Eldridge for are the players who just aren't going to be on the market.
I think team control is really important.
Absolutely.
And you have to have a guy for at least 3 or 4 years. That's the thing about Elliot Ramos. You got about another 4 or 5 years of him under team control. So, and I want to say Kwan is 2 years. So you got 2 more years of under team control before he becomes.
And I trust Buster Posey to be able to get a deal done to keep him around here if that would so be the deal there. So the thing, with Kwan, and I see in the YouTube chat, where would he go? The outfield is backed up. But yeah, you would be moving off Ramos in that situation. That's one of those situations where if you got Stephen Kwan, you find a way to get him into the lineup.
He's a perennial Gold Glove left fielder.
Exactly, and he's exactly what this team
Ramos
needs contact-wise.
Yeah,
no, he's exactly what this team needs contact-wise. He'd be a great leadoff hitter. Would take all the pressure off of needing to put Jung-Hoo Lee in that spot.
Yeah.
You could move Jung-Hoo Lee in the 7th spot last night. Did go 2 for 4 last night. Got a double and a single, but by then the game was so far out of reach that it didn't really matter. You talk about, again, internal acquisitions. Getting better production from Jung-Hoo Lee finally would be as good as a trade deadline acquisition, because I do think, and I know there is a desire for Giants fans to find a bat. I feel like any offensive improvements to this team are just going to have to be internal. It's going to be Elliot Ramos putting together consistent at-bats. It's going to be Jung-Hoo Lee putting together consistent at-bats. It's going to be Casey Schmidt rediscovering that stroke he had before the All-Star break. That, I think, is the offensive improvement you're going to see from this team. I don't envision this team going out and landing a bat.
Speaking of Bryce Eldridge, who, by the way, is back. He's healthy. Hamstring is okay.
Had a couple of home runs this week.
Yeah, he went that Oppo home run, which I happened to see on YouTube. Man, he is just – it's almost as if, like, Dr. Frankenstein created the perfect baseball player. He is fluid, broad shoulders, 6'7". I mean, wow. But
he could help the Warriors out before.
Where's he going to – I mean, it's sort of interesting because Devers has to be your first baseman, right? If Devers is picking up a glove, and I still want to see Devers have to dig one out. Like, I don't know. Have you seen a ball hit to him yet?
I don't. Let me see. Let me look at my scorebook from last night and see if anything starts with a 3. No, nothing was directly hit to him last night.
I'm still not sure. I just want to get an idea. A barometer is what it is that we're dealing with defensively here.
Oh, it's going to get ugly at some point. I mean, we've been warned about this. There's going to be a day. I mean, he's never played the position before. I mean, Dan, one of the reasons why the Giants are hesitant to call Bryce Eldridge up is because they don't want him learning first base at the big league level. And yet that's exactly what they're going to be making Rafi Devers do. Granted, different situation. Rafi's been in the big leagues for several years. He's won a World Series. He's played third base.
He has played a corner infield position, albeit not first.
Exactly. But again, we know. I'll say this, there's going to come a day, there's going to come a game, it's going to happen soon, it could even happen tonight, which would really suck. Rafi Devers' defense is going to rear its ugly head, and it's going to bite this team in the ass, and it might cost this team a game. That's just something that Giants fans need to be prepared for. It's something the Giants aren't prepared for. It's something that Bob Melvin has warned us about is going to happen. Now, as for where Bryce Eldridge plays, because I do agree, I think you do need to keep Rafi in the field, because I think he's one of those guys where he can't sit around for an hour. He's engaged. He needs to be engaged in the field here. And the easy answer is, well, then you would have Bryce Eldridge be your DH. But that's where, and I've spoken on this in the past, Dan, is that I don't know if I want Eldridge to be the DH too, because for the same reason as Rafi, I don't really want Bryce Eldridge sitting in the dugout for an hour in between at-bats. Like, he strikes out his first at-bat. I don't want him sitting around for an hour thinking, man, I struck out. No, I want him getting back in the field, taking his mind off of it, so that way he can't dwell on it. So you got, basically with Rafi and Eldridge, you got 2 guys who can be first baseman and DHs, but are better off as first baseman than they are DH.
And maybe they just share that. Maybe Devers is a first baseman 60% of the time.
A double platoon.
And the other 40%, he's DHing. And then you have Eldridge play first base the days that Devers is the DH. You know,
Giants fans would absolutely
you
love
hope
that.
Well, I would agree with you, especially as these games get more important down the stretch, that he could lose you a game, but you're hoping that he wins you more games than he loses.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I would look at his counterpart tonight. Pete Alonso is a perfect example. Tremendous hitter, not a good defensive first baseman.
No.
And he puts in the work, but he has never been a good.
He can handle the position, yeah.
He's okay. He's out, and I think that's all you would want out of Rafi Devers. But actually, I don't even know because I just want to see at least I just want to see him have to pick something at first base. Like, I want to see somebody handcuff him with a low throw and just see him backhand. I just don't know what we're working with.
I mean, if it's anything like what we've seen in the pregame warm-ups that he does, it's not going to be pretty, which, again, though, there's a level of acceptance on that because if he costs you one or two games with his glove, it's okay if it's because he's making it up with 3 or 4 games with his bat. And so that's just the trade-off that the Giants are going to go with there. And I don't know, like it's clearly obvious because again, it's 3 games since he's been at first base, and he just looks so much more locked in at the plate. And so I don't know if you can go back to having him be a DH because remember, Dan, this is the first year he's been only a DH.
Yeah.
He was a third baseman for the first several years of his career. They had him DH, and he was still having a great year. But I think part of the reason why he got off to a slow start here is just like, yeah, he came in here and he's DHing only in a new area. And you have all this new going on. He's thrown off of his routine, and he doesn't get to play the field. I do think that, that played a role in the slow start that he's had.
Did you see him at first base last night? He's hamming it up with Lindor. Mauricio came over, gave him a shove. He's talking to Soto about the family. I don't know what they're talking about, but there's obvious.
Oh, yeah.
There he's having conversation. You're not doing that when you're hitting in the cage by yourself in between innings.
And Rafi, I mean, he's a happy guy. He's a social guy. You see him joking around a lot. I do think, just the fact that he's in the field, he doesn't have to sit in the dugout by himself anymore. Because remember, Dan, the relievers, they're not in the dugout either. This isn't the old, Oracle Park days, pre-bullpen, where, the relievers and whatnot were sitting in the dugout with you during games. When the team takes the field, it's just you, a couple guys on the bench, and the coaches. You're not sitting there with anybody. And so I do think, for a guy like Rafi getting out there, being able to talk and socialize in the field, so to speak. Yeah, I think all those things are helping him feel more comfortable at the plate and in the field, which is why you're going to see him start to play better. But yeah, it does present an interesting question of just how do you factor Bryce Eldridge into that in the future? And the answer to that is let Buster Posey figure that out.
His one-handed home run, which I'm sure you guys talked about. I'm not sure if you did. I'm assuming you did. That one-handed home run he had in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Where there was basically no...
the first one he had, where he just went down and just completely golfed it out of there.
They always talk about, use your legs as your leverage. That's for all the shit. He just literally I don't think he uses lower body whatsoever.
That was a textbook Vladimir Guerrero, Pablo Sandoval kind of swing. Those are the only guys I've seen hit balls like that. Pablo and Vlad, bad ball hitters. Rafi, he's got some bad ball hitting in him.
Yeah, but Vlad would always put his big button to it, or he'd get those tree trunk.
Well, he had an incredible extension too with his bat as well. He could go out, and Pablo too. They could just extend their bat out and just you could throw the ball 5 feet out the zone. They could still extend out and get.
So for those of you, and you can look it up on YouTube, what it reminded me as a young man was Kirk Gibson in the 1988 World Series hit a similar home run to beat Dennis Eckersley and walk off the Oakland A's in the World Series of Game 1, where he just got a pitch that looked like he was getting handcuffed, and he just reached down, and somehow the thing went out of the park. And there were similarities I felt with that home run when I saw Devers. Devers, you know what he's a good sign, and I heard this from somebody that covered him out in Boston, is that when he's turning on that pitch that usually ties up most left-handers that's down and in, he's hitting that thing solidly to right field. And he's been doing that on numerous occasions. And that's how he hit that home run, which was a pitch that was sort of low and inside. And for a left-hander, that's usually a nightmare, but he got it out. So
he just golfed it again. What I love about his swing is just he looks like a guy who he could hit every side of the field too.
Yeah.
And that just gets me again. That's why we keep feeling more and more excited about what he can do, and can he lead this team? Can and I think that's going to be a thing to watch here down the stretch. Is when you get a guy like Rafi Devers, a guy who's getting paid that big money, who's going to be the centerpiece of this lineup for the next 8 years after this season, it's only again he's the best power hitter they've had in this lineup since Barry Bonds. And Barry Bonds was capable of carrying a team on his own with his bat. And I think that's what we're going to need to see here down the stretch in these last 2 months is, can Rafi just go on a 2-month heater here? But
somebody's got to join him.
Well, I mean, again, I think you're getting that from Adames. You're getting that a little bit from Chapman. But I'm talking about just like an absolute heater here, Dan, where he's hitting like 370 for the next month or so. Something that just where every time he comes up, he feels like he's about to do an incredible amount of damage. And I don't mean like a hot stretch where he's just hitting the ball well. I need a hot stretch where he's, driving runners in scoring position in. If he could just really be that guy, can he lift this lineup up enough to where, it's offsetting some of these pitching struggles so long as they're happening.
It's a lot of pressure to put. I mean, listen, when you make that much money,
that's the situation you're in right now.
Yeah, I get it. When you make that sort of money, it just comes with pressure. Like, you've got to do this.
Like, you're the dude on this team now. Like, when he was originally in Boston, he had other guys around him. Obviously, Mookie Betts was there and whatnot. But Rafi was, he was the last guy standing there at the end, and now he is the guy here. He's not alone, but he is the guy here. It is that is what pressure looks like. That is what happens when you become the big guy. So yeah, I think it's totally fair to put that pressure on Rafi because he's shown throughout his career that he's a guy who can be someone who can handle that level of pressure there. So, and I think that is also why, again, I know a lot of people want to see a bat get added, and that's why we start off this conversation by bringing up Stephen Kwan. I do think, though, again, as I said the other day, the offensive improvements are going to come from within. I don't think they're calling anybody up. I don't think it's going to be a Bryce Eldridge walking through that door to save things. When you think about what positions in the field they even need to fix, if you're moving off of Ramos, that's a bigger trade, but I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to move off Yaz. They're clearly not going to move off Jung-Hoo Lee. The only other position in the field that could really need to be improved is maybe second base, but I think they seem willing to just kind of give it a shot with Casey there for now, unless a better second base option comes up. The only other position you can maybe look to upgrade right now then becomes the catching spot. And, I talked about this with Spadoni yesterday in the Morning Roast, that there is there's chatter out there of Adley Rutschman being dealt from the Baltimore Orioles, and he's having a down year right now. I think he's sitting around 220-something with 8 home runs, which, for a standard catcher, that's pretty good, but Rutschman is a centerpiece of the lineup kind of catcher. That's that could be an interesting move there if the Giants decide to go in that direction, especially because Bailey's been swinging the bat hot right now, and maybe that upgrades his trade value.
All things being relative,
he's swinging a better bat lately.
Better, yeah.
And he's been swinging a good bat this month. And for a catcher, again, if you're a catcher hitting 270 over any stretch, which is I think what Bailey's been doing this month, you're doing pretty good here. And I do believe this is going to be the highest value Bailey will ever have, which is crazy to say because I do think next year, Dan, when ABS comes in more full-time, Bailey's value as a pitch framer is going to decrease significantly. And so if there's a situation where you can move off Bailey now and bring in a proven commodity in Adley Rutschman, and the Orioles, they have a lot of catching depth right now that enables them to move off of Rutschman, I'd at least look into it. And if I'm Buster Posey and if I'm who knows a thing or two about catching, if Buster's signing off on Rutschman, you won't need to break my arm to get me to sign off on.
Well, I think when I look at this baseball team from an offensive standpoint, there's no areas of need right now. There just isn't. There isn't that glaring, gaping hole as there has been in the past. You're pretty much solid at every position 1 through 9. Yeah, you can go out and you can get somebody for Bailey, but Bailey's not your problem. No. Bailey isn't the reason why you're struggling offensively. I think this team, again, it's inexplicable as to why these good players with a proven track record are not hitting with runners in scoring position. But when you say that, it only means that at some point it's going to average out. Doesn't it have to? At some point that they're going to be able to do exactly that. I don't think there's, unlike years in the past, you don't look at this team and saying, wow, who's going to play shortstop now that Crawford isn't here? Nick Ahmed? It's not Luciano. What the hell are we going to do? You don't have any of those concerns anymore. So there is a level of sort of optimism, I guess, there that at some point they're going to hit. They have to.
Well, here's the problem, Dan. And again, it boils down to, I think we started the show off with this point. We're going to finish the show off at this point. It is the runners in scoring position. As a team, they are hitting 233 with runners in scoring position this year. That is 25th best in baseball, which is not very good. But but wait, there's more. It gets worse. If you go from May 1st onward, they're hitting 219 with runners in scoring position. That is by far the worst in baseball. 10 points below the second worst team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are hitting 229 with runners in scoring position since May 1st. At the end of the day, there's no amount of pitching help that is going to fix that. There's no amount of bullpen help that's going to fix that. It's simply a matter of these hitters need to just figure out a way to start driving in these runners who are in scoring position. If they could just start getting these hits, taking that pressure off of them when they're in those situations, stop being tense when there's a runner on second base and actually be loose when there's a runner on second base, that's going to be the difference that turns the Giants from the struggling team that we're seeing right now into the playoff team that we expect them to be. That's going to be the difference at the end of the day. I don't know what deadline acquisition fixes the runners in scoring position problem, but at the end of the day, like, you take care of that. If you could just be a team that can if they could hit 260 with runners in scoring position the rest of the year, which is what they hit in April, that would do wonders for the pitching. That would do wonders for the defense. It would do wonders for the coaching staff. It would do wonders for the fans. It would do wonders for the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap.
Well, look, it's obviously something that's in their head. I think when there's a runner at second base and Devers is standing in the plate, or Adames or Chapman, whether they want to admit this or not, they realize there's a voice in the back of their head somewhere that's like, uh-oh, there's a runner out there.
Here we go again.
And this is where you've struggled. And all you need to do is press a little bit. All you need to do is just simply get off your game a little bit, and that's the end of it. There's no fixing that. That just has to take care of itself organically.
The more you think about what you're trying to do at the plate, the harder it's going to be. This is something, again, we were talking with Dom Smith last week about, what he's learned from working with Barry Bonds. And Dom was basically saying, when you're going up thinking home run, you're not going to get a home run. So you got to go up and just think good contact, and the results will come. That's basically where the Giants are at right now. These guys need to step in the batter's box and don't dwell on the runner on second.
What do
don't
they always
dwell
say? Think middle in.
Exactly.
Just contact. Go back to
just put the wood on the ball. Just put the wood on the ball, and everything else will take care of itself then. So that has been the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap here on this wonderful summer Saturday morning. Dan, you're going to be traveling to parts unknown these next couple weeks.
I'll be gone for a little bit. It won't be the same, obviously, with whoever it is that you drag up here from AA. But no.
Yeah, we'll pull someone up from the minor leagues, or maybe we'll acquire someone at the deadline and slot them in next Saturday too. So, Dan, it's always a pleasure. Zach, great job on the board back there, working on his hair. Love to see that. I'm always a fan of people who work on their hair. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll be back next week, and until then, don't forget everyone, Dodgers suck.